the latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Buses replaced trains between Scunthorpe and Doncaster after a landslip. In Flintshire, the A541 remains closed in both directions along Denby Road in Mould after a fire earlier this week. In London, Regent's Park Road in Finchley is closed southbound off the A1 and Deep North Circular at Henley's Corner after an accident. There are queues from Finchley Central. Long delays on a number of other nearby roads too. On the M25 in Kent, there's a lane closed each way again today for repairs near Junction 5 for the M26. With clockwise delays towards there. There's also a lane closure on the M26 joining the M25 there with queues on that approach. On the M27 in Hampshire, there's a lane closed westbound where someone's broken down between junctions 11 and 10 near Fareham. And on the M5 in Somerset, the southbound exit at junction 25 at Taunton is partly blocked by an accident. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, a woman who 25 years ago, at the age of just 14, tortured and killed her 71-year-old grandmother was last month released from prison on licence.
But this isn't the first time she's been let out. Sarah Davey has been bailed and reincarcerated no less than 7 times. Well, to debate this, we're joined by former Detective Chief Inspector Colin Sutton, famed for catching the notorious killer of Millie Dowler, Levi Belfield, and GB News' own Patrick Christie's.
I think we have to qualify that where the killer is a child, and we have to accept that to consign somebody to be in prison for 60, 70 or 80 years is probably something that we ought to think twice about. So I understand why this happens. I understand the outrage. I really understand the outrage. I think that 14-year-olds who kill should be given a chance to rehabilitate? Yes, I do. Do I think that somebody who's had 7 such chances and blown them away deserves an 8th chance? Then probably I think that's a lot more doubtful.
I would have thought that by chance, sort of 3 or 4, they'd have got the picture, but clearly not. Patrick, what do you make of it all?
Well, some people are born evil, aren't they? And why should we have to suffer to have them back out on the streets? There are some crimes that are so serious that you should pay for it either with your life or for the rest of your life. This was a sadistic murder, the details of which absolutely cannot be read out on air at this particular time of day. There are 3 issues here. Is this justice for the families of victims? I just think a release like this is a slap in the face, really, to us all. It's another example of soft justice. And just because she's a child, well, she was old enough to commit the heinous crime she committed.
(9:30) on Thursday, the 2nd of May. This is Britain's News on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Thanks for joining us this morning. So, about 300 people have been arrested during police crackdowns on pro-Palestinian protests. And a counter-group at American universities. Would you want to see our police get tough on protesters too?
And much closer to home, students in Leeds, Newcastle, Bristol, Manchester and elsewhere, they're protesting outside campus buildings in protest against, you guessed it, the war in Gaza.
And Rwanda's legal challenge after one migrant has voluntarily gone to Rwanda. Civil servants are threatening to scupper the plan completely. We'll tell you how.
Happy birthday. Do we call her Mom?
No.
Princess Caroline. Charlotte. I've got the wrong. Princess Charlotte celebrates her 9th birthday this morning. A new birthday photo could be released by the Princess of Wales any moment now. I was thinking of Princess Caroline of Monaco.
I was going to say who is Princess Caroline. We haven't got one of those.
Slight age gap, about 50 years.
I wouldn't call her Mom. What do you officially call a child princess?
Well, she would be Your Royal Highness.
Oh,
imagine calling her that.
Imagine.
If you were Kate and William, you would not be expecting fellow children or the teachers to say that to Charlotte or to Louis or to George, would you?
The things my children would try and get away with if I could call them Your Royal Highness. What a parenting nightmare. Let us know your thoughts this morning. gbnews.com/your say. First, the very latest news with Sophia.
Bev, thank you. Good morning. It's 9:32. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. 36-year-old Marcos Aurelio Orduini Monzo will appear in court today, charged with the murder of 14-year-old Daniel Angerin following a sword attack in north-east London. Daniel was fatally injured as he walked to school on Tuesday morning. 4 other people, including 2 police officers, were injured. The Met Police say Monzo from Newham is a dual Spanish-Brazilian national. He's due to appear at Westminster Magistrates' Court. Voters are heading to the polls today in a series of local elections across the country. There are elections in 107 local authorities across England, as well as 11 mayoral races. A by-election will elect a new Blackpool South MP following the resignation of former Conservative Scott Benton. Police and crime commissioners will also be chosen. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has been out campaigning. Scotland's longest-serving Deputy First Minister is expected to announce that he is launching a campaign to become SNP leader and First Minister later. John Swinney has received support from senior members of the SNP since First Minister Humza Yousaf announced on Monday he would step down. The Perthshire North MSP, who served as Nicola Sturgeon's deputy for almost 9 years, will make a statement in Edinburgh later today. And we're being warned of widespread travel disruption after a night of heavy rainfall and thunderstorms. Overnight, a care home in Sussex was damaged by lightning strikes, according to West Sussex Fire and Rescue. Meanwhile, yellow weather warnings remain in place across large parts of southern England. The Met Office said it could bring difficulties to driving conditions and some flooding. And for the latest story, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
Good morning. 9:34. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Bev Turner, and Andrew Pearce.
Well, I've resolved it. I've checked on the Buckingham Palace website. She's 9 years old today, Princess Charlotte, and her formal title is Her Royal Highness Princess Charlotte of Wales. So if you meet her, Beverly, you can say to her, you can curtsy if you would like to.
Imagine to a 9-year-old.
And say, very nice to meet you, Your Royal Highness.
I wonder what her teachers do at school. At school.
Can you imagine her with putting her hands on her hips saying, you can't say that to me, I'm a princess.
Yeah, you can't.
I'm a Royal
attention.
Highness. Wouldn't that be funny?
How do you raise a normal child in that environment?
That is what a challenge it is, because, I mean, if you looked at the Queen's children, would you argue she raised them? Well, I would say Anne.
Anne, yes.
Brilliant. Prince Edward, OK.
Yes.
Charles, Prince Andrew, not so much.
No.
William and Harry.
Well,
Princess of Wales did her best, but she was taken away when they were too young.
And isn't that where Princess Anne did brilliantly, though, in telling Zara and Peter Phillips, you're not having any titles,
That's right.
You're going to be normal. They appear to be relatively normal. I mean, he's had a couple of marriages, hasn't he, Peter?
Well, he's had one at least.
Has he had at least one?
And
Zara's fabulous.
And they're both popular, and they've made their own way, and they've made money. I mean,
and
Zara,
successful in their own right.
I mean, she's won Olympic medals too.
Exactly.
And Princess Anne was a very successful sportswoman too.
The moral to the story, don't call your children Your Royal Highness if you can help it.
And it's that whole new expression too, she's a right little princess. Now, after one failed asylum seeker voluntarily went to Rwanda, just to remind you, with £3,000 of public money in their pocket, the civil service unions, of course they are now threatening to try to scupper the entire Rwanda plan by having a judicial review.
That's right. The FDA union, which represents senior civil servants, claims that Home Office staff could be in breach of international law if they implement the Safety of Rwanda Act. So, who better to explain this to us than brilliant barrister and columnist Sam Fowles in the studio? Right, Sam, break this down to us. What exactly is happening here?
Well, basically, this isn't about stopping the Rwanda plan. It's about getting civil servants out of a catch-22 situation.
It is.
And it comes down to bad drafting. You've got, on one hand, an Act of Parliament that says civil servants have got to follow the Civil Service Code. And that code says you've got to obey the law and you've got to uphold the rule of law. On the other hand, you've got the Rwanda bill, which says ministers can instruct civil servants to disregard the law if that law is an injunction from the European Court of Human Rights. And so civil servants are saying, look, if you tell us to do this, we don't know which instruction from Parliament we're supposed to follow. Is it uphold the law and the rule of law? Is it ignore the law? we need an answer. You didn't give us an answer in the bill, even though we asked you to. So if the ministers can't come up with an answer, the courts are going to have to.
Of course it's about scuppering the Rwanda bill. It's despised by the left. The Labour Party has voted against it 134 times. The FDA union wants Labour to win the election. The left are paranoid now that this Rwanda bill might be successful. We've seen what's happening in Ireland and Northern Ireland. Sam, refugees saying they're scuttling out of Northern Ireland into Southern Ireland because they fear being deported to Rwanda. This is what it's all about.
Well, if you're right, it's a really bad plan, because if they win this, it's not going to scupper the Rwanda bill. It's just going to provide clarity and ask ministers to go back to Parliament and get Parliament to come down on one side of this or the other.
And that's what Parliament will do, because Parliament, if the FDA get a judicial review and the judicial review blocks the civil servants from doing this, Parliament can then force a vote compelling the civil service to do it.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. But it comes back down to just the stunning incompetence of ministers on this. If you're going to write a bill, and you know, we've disagreed on the Rwanda bill, you know where I stand, you know I think it's a bad bill. But if you're going to write a bill, it should do what it says on the tin. And this one, because ministers didn't have the courage to put their cards on the table and say, yes, what we're trying to do here is set up this fight with the European Court of Human Rights. We want that fight. They didn't have the courage to come straight out and say that, so they gave this wishy-washy clause that says ministers can instruct civil servants to ignore the law sometimes, maybe, which was actually already the law. And as a result, you've got this lack of clarity, which the courts have got to clear up.
So what would the civil servants say they are concerned about? What's the precedent they're worried this would set?
So the most important part of the Civil Service Code that is concerned here is the requirement to uphold the rule of law. And the rule of law is the sort of fundamental principle of a functioning democracy, which is that where we make laws or where we agree to laws, we have to stick by them. And that includes both domestic laws, so things like don't steal, don't murder people, and international laws. And that's the treaties that we as a nation sign up to and say we're going to abide by. And it's not just about individual laws, it's about the wider principle of saying when we say we're going to stick to a rule, we stick to it, come hell or high water, unless we change it in an illegitimate way. And that what the civil servants are worried about, and why this is such an important point to be making, is that the ministers are asking them to do the opposite and say, yes, we've agreed to this law, we've gone out to our international partners and say we're going to do this,
Sam,
and now we're just not.
No, can we just put an important caveat in here? It's not just ministers saying that. Parliament has agreed it. It's gone through the Commons, it's gone through the House of Lords. Yeah. Parliament has agreed it with a comfortable majority. It's not, you're just saying about ministers. The whole machinery of government has been done, the proper democratic process. Parliament has agreed that these flights should go to Rwanda, and now a civil service union thinks we'll do our best to overturn the will of Parliament.
Well, the first part of that, you're absolutely right. That was you're right to correct me on that. But it's not about overturning the will of Parliament, because Parliament has also said to civil servants, you are to uphold the rule of law. So, and again, that was the Cragg Act. That was something that was passed by Parliament in exactly the same way with the support of a majority. So civil servants have got two conflicting instructions here, and we need to find a way to say which one of those instructions do you want to follow. In my view, speaking again personally and sort of from a political point, because I don't know what the court is going to decide, I think upholding the rule of law is a much more important thing than winning a particular political battle over Rwanda.
This is a waste of time. They did this, the FDA, in 2021, after the Prime Minister's advisor on ministerial codes decided that Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, had bullied civil servants. Poor civil servants being bullied. There was a judicial review, and Boris did not dismiss his Home Secretary.
Yeah.
So what is this? This is just posturing and time-wasting, and it's trying to delay the flights going.
Well, that was about the ministerial code, which is very different from the civil service code. So the ministerial code is, in my view, not really worth the paper it's written on, because it's just it can be overruled by the Prime Minister at a whim. So it's much more important for ministers to sort of cosy up to the Prime Minister than actually act ethically. That's a whole other problem. Right. But the court was right. The court doesn't have any power to enforce the ministerial code. This is a different thing because it's not just Parliament that has imposed the ministers that have imposed the Civil Service Code. It's Parliament that passed an act saying we need a Civil Service Code. And that has then gone on to say we're targeting this much wider principle, which is the rule of law.
Right.
So the court may give clarity on that.
The other question it raises again is, how did the politicians or the politicians' legal teams not know this would happen?
Well, that is why the mind boggles, to be honest, because, you know what, they were told this would happen. And in fact, Tom Hickman, KC, who's one of our greatest public lawyers, wrote an article in December, I think it was, I first read it, saying, look, this is going to create a problem for you. You need to amend this clause. I mean, Tom, again, was very sceptical about the bill, but he's saying if this is what you want to do, you need to amend this clause to give clarity, to say, yes, we're going to be out and out about saying we're going to breach international law on this, or we're going to be out and out about saying we're not going to breach international law.
But we don't even know if the European Court is going to block the flight to Rwanda. We don't even know that. This is a lot of supposition and crystal ball gazing here, Sam.
Yeah, and that might be, for me, that's the biggest sort of legal challenge for it, that it's a bit hypothetical. So it may be...
It's not a bit hypothetical, it's hugely hypothetical. They may... Remember, the British Supreme Court cleared the original flight to Rwanda. It was an unnamed European Court judge blocked it. There's no reason to suppose that they'll block this flight again. Now Parliament's approved it.
And I think what
I'm saying is, isn't the FDA, the civil civilian, jumping the gun?
Well, under normal circumstances, I would probably agree with you. The reason I don't is that things are going to move really quickly. And I've been in this sort of situation with the Ben Act litigation back in 2019 when we were talking about leaving the European Union without a deal. And what we had to deal with is something that a decision can be made so quickly that before the court can give clarity, you have irreversible consequences. i.e. a flight has gone, civil servants have broke the Civil Service Code. So what civil servants are asking is for the court to avoid that problem, give them advance notice of just what to do in this situation if the European Court issues an injunction, and then we won't have the sort of the chaos that could really ensue from civil servants not knowing what to do. And let's not forget that civil servants under recent governments have had to resign because they're being asked. Senior civil servants have had to resign because they're being asked to breach international law. And if the government really is serious about getting flights off the ground to Rwanda, it can't have its senior people quitting in the middle of the operation because they're being asked to do something that's against their code.
Fascinating.
OK, thank you, Sam. And just your take on these protests, really. We'd love to hear your opinion on this in America and also here. Look, academia and students have a long history of being some of the most agitated protesters. This is what students have done for years. But obviously this time it seems to be ramped up another level, and particularly the police moving in America. We've got pictures here. This is live in California.
It's got very unpleasant, hasn't it?
Very unpleasant. And can you understand how this febrile atmosphere has developed in relation to this conflict?
Yeah, I think it's always such a difficult thing to talk about, and we've talked about this on this show. How when we're talking about this, it's so important to talk about the need to cut down on anti-Semitism and stamp that out completely. The need to recognise the importance of Israel's existence, and yet at the same time, it's equally important to talk about the need to make sure that Israel obeys the laws of war and the need to protect innocent civilians. And I think you have two sides of this that both come from legitimate perspectives and are not being able to come together. But what's really problematic is those legitimate perspectives are sort of being used as an excuse to shut down the other side. And this debate is being framed as either you support Israel and therefore support everything that Israel does, or you support Palestine and therefore you support Hamas. And that shouldn't be the case.
And what is happening, we've seen in these American campuses, Sam, that some of the protesters are trying to stop Jewish students going to university. That is shameful.
Yeah, that's absolutely shameful. And in the same way, you've had sort of, extremist pro-Israel protesters who are sort of attacking the students.
They've been provoked into defending their...
And so you've got groups on both sides behaving abominably. However, I think it's also really important to mention you have large groups on both sides that have been behaving really well. And I saw, it was a clip on YouTube, on Twitter that I saw from Columbia University, and you had Jewish students and protesters sort of talking, having a conversation and really sort of working it out in a way that's far more mature than adult politicians.
Yeah.
Sam, it's always good to talk to you. That's the barrister, Sam Powers. We're going to be talking, of course, about how some of the student protests now are springing up at our own universities here in England, a number of universities. They're sitting protests. They're nothing like on the scale of America. And dear God, let's hope they don't get as bad as that.
1,000 arrests of students in total in America over these protests on both sides of this debate. Right, up next this morning, Princess Charlotte celebrates her Royal Highness celebrates her 9th birthday today. We're going to be looking at her and what this might mean for the family today. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News with Dubes & Co from 6, followed by Farage at 7. At 8, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg addresses the state of the nation. And at 9, join Patrick Christie's Tonight, followed by Headliners at 11. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel. Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
King Charles is well known for his views on climate change, and apparently he's now taking steps to make sure that his Sandringham estate is more eco-friendly. Well, it's been reported that the King is planning to have 2,000 solar panels installed on that estate, and it's set to make the estate largely self-sufficient with a supply of its own green electricity. Well, joining me now is former royal correspondent, the absolute legend, that is Michael Cole. Michael, twice in 2 days I feel blessed. Look, King Charles has long been talking up his eco-credentials. Some may uncharitably compare him to Greta Thunberg in a tweed suit. It's one thing, however, to be self-sufficient in energy, but got to be said, solar panel farms, they're hardly eco-friendly, are they? They destroy environments. What's your take?
I certainly agree with that. The King has indeed, as you say, Martin, and good afternoon to you, applied for planning permission. Now, this is going to be a bit of a mini solar farm, 2,000 solar panels on a site of 2 hectares. And as he has the Sandringham estate, 20,000 acres, 4 acres isn't going to be very much, and it's nowhere near where he lives at Sandringham House. Now, these things, which we're seeing on the screen, are hugely controversial up here. A monster one is being planned on the borders between Suffolk and Cambridge, and the people there really despise it. As they say quite rightly, is this grade A agricultural land being turned over to this semi-industrial use and spoiling the look of the countryside and changing it in a negative way.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, Beverly's very excited. It's the 9th birthday of Princess Charlotte, HRH Princess Charlotte, who is Princess Charlotte of Wales, of course.
She's lovely.
Isn't she a cutie?
Lovely. Her mum has said, actually, behind the scenes, she said she's the one that's in charge with the brothers. Royal fans...
Aren't they always?
Aren't they always? Around the world, waiting to see whether the Princess of Wales will release a birthday photo of Charlotte this morning.
So let's talk to the former BBC Royal correspondent, Michael Cole. Michael, she is a little cracker, isn't she? And she's just looks fabulous, and she's got that cheeky grin. It's become a tradition, hasn't it, that we see a photograph of the three children on their birthday, and I think everybody's looking forward to one today.
Good morning, Andrew. Good morning, Bev. How wonderful to be 9 years old. And let's say happy birthday, Princess Charlotte. I'm sure she is at school this morning, no bunking off school just because it's your birthday. And I'm quite sure that she is, as you've intimated, a joy to her mother, particularly at the time as she's undergoing a treatment for cancer. Yes, the Princess of Wales, Kate, likes to do things her own way. She issued the birthday photograph for Prince Louis last week in the afternoon. So maybe later today we will see another image. And she is a charming looking little girl, very much in my mind a Middleton, like her younger brother Louis, whereas Prince George at age 10, he's always going to be ahead of her. He's very much a Spencer. But she is third in line to the throne. Since male primogeniture was abolished in 2011, including, interestingly, Andrew, the prohibition on royal people marrying Catholics. That also went out the window in 2011. She is, as you say, third in line to the throne, and a charming little girl. I hope the photograph shows her in a pose of a thoughtful pose, because quite often when you say to children, smile, what you get is a lot of gaps in the teeth at that particular age when their milk teeth are being succeeded by the permanent teeth. So happy birthday to her. She's a great child, and I'm quite sure her father absolutely adores her.
Oh, thank you, Michael. Michael Kohler, happy birthday, Princess Charlotte. A lot of you getting in touch at home, particularly about the protests in Palestine. And one of you saying that actually Bernadette says there are preachers on the campuses in America converting kids en masse in these camps. The students don't really know what they're protesting about. So keep your messages coming in this morning. gbnews.com/your say. Lots more to come this morning. And don't forget to go out and vote as well today.
Yes,
Britain's Newsroom.
Polling station up until 10 o'clock, I think.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some places seeing some pleasant warm May sunshine today, but staying fairly cloudy in the south, and in eastern areas a chilly breeze off the North Sea. Had some big thunderstorms through the night across the south. Still a few heavy downpours here and there this morning. Parts of southern England, the Midlands and South Wales in particular. The rain will ease a little bit through the day, but staying fairly dull and damp across the southwest. Some brighter skies for East Anglia, Northern England, Northern Ireland and a good chunk of Scotland. Western Scotland in particular, 21, maybe 22 degrees, but much cooler on these eastern coasts with that breeze coming in from the sea, and cooler with the cloud and the showery rain across the southwestern quarter. That rain will continue well into this evening as well. And then later in the night, we need to look at further pulses of heavy rain, potentially further thunderstorms coming into parts of East Anglia. Further north, it generally stays dry. There'll be some clearer spells, but quite a bit of cloud. That'll keep the temperatures up 9 to 11 Celsius. On to tomorrow, and it's a similar story. We're going to start pretty grey over the Midlands and Wales with some outbreaks of rain, but heavier rain coming into parts of eastern England, so a different feel across northeast England in particular. Again, the potential for 1 or 2 thunderstorms. Brighter day in southwest England. Again, chilly on some of these North Sea coasts with temperatures really struggling under the cloud. But yet again, if you like warm sunshine, western Scotland will be the place to be.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Buses replaced trains between Scunthorpe and Doncaster after a landslip. In Flintshire, the A541 remains closed along Denby Road in Mould after a fire earlier this week. In Monmouthshire, on the A465 heads of the Valleys Road, the inside lane's blocked eastbound by an accident between the Govilan roundabout and the Forest interchange, causing queues. In London, Regent's Park Road is closed southbound at Henley's Corner after an accident with queues from Finchley Central. On the M25 in Kent, there's a lane closed each way again today for repairs near Junction 5 for the M26. Queues from Junction 4 at Orpington. Queues too on the M26 towards the M25 there, and on the M5 in Somerset. The southbound exit at Junction 25 at Taunton is partly blocked by an accident, with delays towards and past there. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, GBNews.com.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
You're the winner of the Great British Giveaway.
I'm slipping neck. Oh dear.
Oh my God, are you joking?
You're joking. Really? Seriously, it's not a wine. What is it?
Oh my God, this is amazing. Thank you.
The next winning call could be answered by you. For a chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel. And from tonight,
The people decide.
As the country heads to the polls in a rush of elections.
we'll take you through the night as the first results come in.
And we'll pick up at breakfast
with the very best guests and analysis.
And on the weekend, the results won't stop, and neither will we.
We'll explore what it all means for you as we look ahead to the general election.
Continuing coverage live from tonight at midnight on GB News.
Very good morning. It's 10 o'clock on Thursday, the 2nd of May. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Bev Turner, and Andrew Pearce.
Well, at least 300 people have been arrested during police crackdowns on those pro-Palestinian protests and a counter-group at US universities. Would you like to see our police getting as tough on protesters here?
And closer to home, students in Leeds, Newcastle, Bristol and elsewhere are protesting outside campus buildings to support peace in Gaza. How big are these protests going to become?
And voters are heading to the polls today in a series of local elections across the country.
And a royal birthday. Princess Charlotte celebrates her 9th birthday this morning. A new birthday photo could be released by the Princess of Wales any minute now.
Yes, happy birthday to the daughter of the Prince and Princess of Wales, as you say, turning 9. We'll be discussing the similarities between her and the late Queen. Plus, Kensington Palace may release a new photo, so stay tuned.
Can't wait. Donald Trump in court. The former president's hush money trial continues today in the... it's all to do with, what's her name? Stormy Daniels.
Stormy Daniels. Stormy Daniels. Stormy Daniels caused a bit of a storm in Donald Trump's life.
But I'd like to see the latest polls. Is it damaging Trump at all? I doubt it.
No, it does the opposite, doesn't it, in America?
And I think these protests and these seeming impotence of the authorities to stop Jewish students from going to university is going to damage Biden, and it should.
Let us know your thoughts this morning. gbnews.com/your say. First, though, the very latest news with Sophia Wensler.
Bev, thank you. Good morning. It's 1 minute past 10. I'm Sophia Wansler in the GB Newsroom. Your top story this hour. 36-year-old Marcus Aurelio Orduini Monzo will appear in court today, charged with the murder of 14-year-old Daniel Anjurin following a sword attack in north-east London. Daniel was fatally injured as he walked to school on Tuesday morning. 4 other people, including 2 police officers, were also injured. The Met Police say Monzo from Newham is a dual Spanish-Brazilian national. He has now arrived at Westminster Magistrates Court. He's also been charged with 2 counts of attempted murder, 2 counts of grievous bodily harm, aggravated burglary and possession of a bladed article. Voters are heading to the polls today in a series of local elections across the country. There are elections in 107 local authorities across England, as well as 11 mayoral races. A by-election will elect a new Blackpool South MP following the resignation of former Conservative Scott Benton. Police and crime commissioners will also be chosen. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has been out campaigning today. Meanwhile, Labour leader Keir Starmer was at the polling station, and Reform Party leader Richard Tice was also out casting his vote this morning. Scotland's longest-serving Deputy First Minister is expected to announce that he's launching a campaign to become SNP leader and First Minister later. John Swinney has received support from senior members of the SNP since First Minister Humza Yousaf announced on Monday he would step down. The Perthshire North MSP, who served as Nicola Sturgeon's deputy for almost 9 years, will make a statement in Edinburgh later today. Former SNP member Stuart Crawford doesn't have confidence in John Swinney.
Has been First Minister before, back in the sort of turn of the century, when I, in fact, was a SNP member and parliamentary candidate on 2 occasions, both of which I withdrew from. And there were 3 elections in his last tenure. 1 general election in 2001, Scottish elections in 2003, and the European election in 2004, in all of which the SNP lost seats. So I don't have any great enthusiasm for him as a leader. And I think what we're looking at is, if he becomes a leader, a period of managed decline.
We're being warned of widespread travel disruption after a night of heavy rainfall and thunderstorms. Overnight, a care home in Sussex was damaged by lightning strikes. That's according to West Sussex Fire and Rescue. Meanwhile, yellow weather warnings remain in place across large parts of southern England. The Met Office said it could bring difficult driving conditions and some flooding. In other news, students have set up sit-in camps at some UK universities to protest Israel's war against Hamas. Students in Leeds, Newcastle and Bristol set up tents outside campus buildings in protest against the war in Gaza. It comes amid violent clashes between the police and protesters at universities in the US. About 300 people were arrested during police crackdowns on demonstrations at US universities yesterday. Hundreds of police descended on UCLA campus as protests continue there. Donald Trump's been threatened with jail as he returns back to court later. The former US president will face another hearing on further alleged breaches of a gag order. Earlier in the week, he was fined over £7,000 for multiple breaches of different gag orders, with the judge suggesting he could be jailed if further breaches continued. US political analyst Eric Ham says Donald Trump is in a face-off with the judge.
I think what will certainly send many people in a tizzy is, in fact, if there's a way to actually jail Donald Trump. There are many who believe that it's nearly impossible to actually place a former president in jail because of the fact that there is a Secret Service duty to actually to protect him. So, of course, many people would be watching to see if, in fact, the judge is willing to go that far. And I think what we're seeing here is Donald Trump and this judge in a face-off to actually determine who actually wins, because I think what we're seeing take place is a game of chicken between both of these men right now.
And a group of more than 10,000 black cab drivers are suing Uber after accusing it of breaching taxi booking rules in London. A group action claim has been filed in the High Court over Uber's operations in the capital between May 2012 and March 2018. If successful, it could cost the cab giant more than £250 million. And for the latest story, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
What is the time? It is 10:07. You're with Britain's News. You're on GB News with Andrew Pearson, Bev Turner.
Let's see what you've been saying at home. This person has said if he had to get everybody lined up against a wall, presumably to shout at them rather than anything more violent, he said at the top would be politicians, then it would be civil servants, then it would be the judiciary, then it would be the media, and that is the road to freedom. I hope you wouldn't put us on that list as well here at GB News. I don't think that's very fair. But this is about the fact that the civil servants are trying to stop the Rwanda plan at the moment.
I love Sam Foles, but when his opening line was, this isn't because they want to stop the scheme. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
The Labour Party failed, so they'll try and block it.
Debbie says, happy birthday, Charlotte. I bet she gets called Her Royal Highness in front of Uncle and Auntie Markle. I bet she insists upon it.
And I bet Meghan insists her children are called Their Royal Highness.
They won't be. Are they?
They're Prince and Princess.
Oh, what? That doesn't seem right, does it?
Yeah.
Alan says civil servants should carry out the will of the Parliament. I'm sick of the left blob running this country, deciding which ministers they will work with. Start sacking a few and see the rest fall into line to protect their generous pension and salary. That's a very good point. We've just spotted a story in the paper as well about the number of children being prescribed sleeping pills in this country. 750,000 nearly prescriptions for under 16s being given sleeping tablets.
Why? I mean, it's outrageous.
It was 11-year-olds who were the most frequently given what they're called hypnotics, accounting for nearly 81,000 prescriptions.
Well, why wouldn't 11-year-olds be able to go to sleep? Because they're on their computers all night. They're not, and their heads are racing.
Social media pressures, say the experts, fallout from the pandemic, worries about the future, all feed a toxic cocktail of worries that left children battling to sleep.
It also makes the point again, doesn't it,
Awful.
that mums and dads should say to the kids, switch off the devices after dinner, 7 o'clock.
That's the trouble. They're wired, and they're going to sleep and they're wired, and they're worried about climate change, and they're worried about whether they've got their makeup right, or they look OK, are they too fat, are they too thin? All of that pressure. Our poor kids, what have we done to them?
And you're saying your children are now fretting about Palestine?
Yeah, and saying, well, we should be supporting Palestine, shouldn't we? They don't really want to, but that's kind of the feeling that they're getting at school. Not that they don't want to, they're just saying, I don't really understand it. I don't really feel it's anything to do with me.
And they're getting a skewed version.
That's right. Well, we're seeing it at the moment, obviously, in the universities all across the world. There were violent scenes yesterday.
Yeah, and that's 300 people arrested during police crackdowns on some of those protests in the early hours of Wednesday at Columbia University in New York, and it's spread now in California.
Also now here in Britain, students have been setting up sit-in camps at some universities to protest Israel's war against Hamas. We're seeing pictures, these were in Newcastle yesterday. But what message is this sending to Jewish students? Well, Gary Mond is the chairman of the National Jewish Assembly. And maybe we start with that question, Gary. What message are these protests sending to Jewish students at these universities?
A highly negative one is the answer. What we're seeing is essentially intimidatory behaviour by the so-called pro-Palestinian students. And we're witnessing anti-Semitism growing all the time across the country in so many walks of life. Only yesterday in Manchester, a Jewish woman was thrown off a bus because she actually dared to criticise a pro-Palestinian sticker. And we're seeing it everywhere now, and now it's the turn of the universities. And what we're witnessing in Columbia and other universities in the States is going to happen here. And this is something we must not tolerate.
Gary, I saw some of the protest leaders are saying we're doing this because universities in Britain are complicit in genocide in Gaza. Well, I fundamentally disagree with the fact there is a genocide going on in Gaza, but how can they argue that universities who are teaching the next generation of leaders and doctors and in this country are complicit in genocide in any shape or form?
They can't, and it's not their business to, quite frankly. What is happening is that left-wing ideals have taken over a whole generation of students. And this is leading, together with Islamist fundamentalists supporting them. This is leading to what we're seeing at the moment. And quite frankly, the universities need to get tough. If we see any form of intimidatory or threatening or violent behaviour on behalf of these demonstrating students, the universities need to suspend the students from their degrees, and if it means they don't graduate, so be it. Please don't forget there's one very important point that differentiates students from everybody else. The government, the British government, is still funding to the tune of approximately £30,000 on average every single student that's going through our university system. It is not the student's place. Yes, they can have freedom of speech, but it's not the student's place to misbehave in the way that they are doing, and they need to be disciplined firmly.
But Gary, a sit-in is not preventing any Jewish student going to university. As long as they are not prevented from doing that and they are not found guilty of anti-Semitic behaviour, those protests should be allowed to continue, surely?
Up to a point, yes, but have a look at what's been happening in America. We're seeing videos of Jewish students being stopped from attending their classes. We are seeing violent behaviour there on a tremendous scale. And I'm sorry to have to say, but where America goes, Britain...
I think we lost Gary.
I think we've lost Gary.
We'll get you back, Gary. We just want to show these live pictures here of California. Obviously, we have the time difference, of course, here in California. We're looking at nighttime pictures here, where there were the latest figures. There's been 1,000 students in America arrested over these protests, which have turned violent against the police. Now, I imagine some of these students would argue, well, we can protest for peace in Gaza without being anti-Semitic.
Absolutely. And what's made it worse here is because pro-Israeli students or demonstrators have gone to these universities as they're outraged that Jewish students were blocked from going to university, then the violence has kicked off. But the fault surely lies with the pro-Palestinians blocking Jewish students from going to their lectures. It's outrageous.
Yes,
We've got Gary back, I think.
Yeah, 2 points here. Firstly, these pro-Palestinian students obviously don't know their history, that since Israel was created in 1948, there's been 6 or 7 attempts and generous offers made by successive Israeli governments for two-state solutions. And these have all been turned down. So if they want peace, just read the history book and see what Hamas and their supporters are doing to stop that. Secondly, I'm starting to hear news that Hamas are rejecting the latest ceasefire proposal, which has been strongly supported by the British and American governments. If that is the case, we're going to almost certainly see Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu order the troops into Rafah, and this is going to accelerate the matter to a considerable extent. And so the police in this country need to be ready.
And Gary, I can't see how Hamas will ever accept a ceasefire because they've not given up the hostages, and also they are committed to the eradication from the face of the planet, the State of Israel.
I completely agree with you, and it's a great shame that so many senior politicians across the world don't see it that way.
It doesn't look like there's any sort of peace solution in sight, though, Gary, at the moment, does it? How long do you think this conflict is going to go on?
The solution that has been spoken about would be for Israel to wipe out Hamas physically on the ground, and then working together with sensible Arab countries and the West to impose some kind of Marshall Plan on Gaza to eradicate the hatred that there is for Jews in that country, and to make sure that successive future generations of Gazans do not grow up to hate Jews and Israel. That is the way forward. Get rid of the violent people.
Events of the last 6 months will have done the polar opposite, though, Gary, won't they, for children who've been orphaned in Palestine?
You could have said the same thing about the Germans in Nazi Germany, and yet the Marshall Plan there succeeded over a few years. It will take many years. Yes, of course. But then if one explains to these children, look, what happened on the 7th of October, with so many Jews being murdered, raped, have babies being beheaded, then it will perhaps be possible to gain some kind of understanding of the role that Israel played.
Gary, can I just ask you on a personal level, as a Jewish man, have you experienced or seen or felt any uptake or increase in any anti-Semitism towards you or your family?
I can say that I personally have not, but I'm well aware of friends who have. And there are lots of little incidents. You're obviously familiar with the Gideon Falter incident that happened 2 weeks ago. Gideon Falter was not the first person to be treated this way. There have been many ordinary Jewish people who don't crave publicity, who don't want to get on the news, who are having the same, or being behaved to by the police in the same way near those hate marches. And I think that's important to appreciate that. It's not just Gideon Falter.
All right, that's Gary Mond, who's chairman of the National Jewish Assembly. Gideon Falter, just to remind people, was the gentleman, he's an activist, who was told by the police, he was dressed, you look very Jewish, or I think that was the expression the police officer used. We're advising you to walk away because your presence is provocative, and was told he'd be arrested if he didn't walk away, which was shameful. Particularly when the Metropolitan Police Commissioner then defended the copper, who was not a young, inexperienced copper, but an experienced sergeant's conduct.
A lot of you getting in touch about the storms in the night. Did you hear the storms in the night?
I did. 3:30, I think I woke up.
Yeah, 4 o'clock in the morning it was.
Was it 4 o'clock?
Yeah. Talking about how extraordinary the thunder and lightning was at 4 o'clock in the morning down here. Let us know your thoughts, and also asking what we're going to do for the bank holiday weekend. It's a bank holiday weekend, everybody.
Are you going away? Have you got plans? Let us know. You can send your messages to us. We'll read them out. We'll share them. You're going on the train? You're driving?
Train?
Yeah.
Fat chance.
Yeah. Are there strikes?
Oh, it's going to be... I don't even bother looking. I just presume there's always going to be strikes now with the railways on a bank holiday weekend. Or repair works, bus replacement service, the 3 words that are guaranteed to make my blood run cold. Right, still to come this morning, 4 news presenters have accused the BBC of grinding down women over pay. We'll have the latest on that. This is Britain's Newsroom, where we're very much not ground down on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Between 1955 and 1989, an average of 55 nuclear tests were conducted across the globe each year. More than 30,000 young British and Commonwealth servicemen served at British test locations in Australia and the Pacific Ocean. But in the years since, those who were involved say they've been ignored and lied to about their exposure to radiation. For decades, Lab Rats International has represented the millions across the world exposed to fallout from the testing programmes and the families who still suffer today from illness and deformities. Last year, the government unveiled the Nuclear Test Medal, recognising the military, civilian and overseas staff and personnel who participated in Britain's nuclear testing programme in the 1950s. But for Lab Rats founder Alan Owen, whose own father was a nuclear test veteran, the work is only just beginning. In September, they launched a legal challenge to the Ministry of Defence to provide the test veterans full medical records, which they say they've been denied access to.
We sit in this bubble as the nuclear test veteran community, fighting against the establishment. And they will say, you know, ministers will go in Parliament and say, all you've got to do is apply for your medical records and they'll give them to you. You know, it just doesn't happen. It's not a reality. They're not there to as easy, as accessible as just applying. They will fight you all the way. They will delay it.
In response, a government spokesperson said, "We are grateful to all service personnel who participated in the British nuclear testing programme, which is why we have formally recognised them with an official medal. Nuclear test veterans who believe they have suffered ill health due to service have the existing and long-standing right to apply for no-fault compensation under the War Pension Scheme." The fight for these veterans and their families lives on, because thousands who came before never got the recognition and justice for their service.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
is 10:21. You're with Britain's News. I'm with GBNews, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner. We've got our panel here. Sam Lister and Carol Malone isn't here. No idea what she's doing. She's probably doing her makeup, Carol.
Let's be honest, the last time she was on the show, she actually got up and walked out to go and cough, so anything could happen today.
So she might turn up.
She's going to be coming in just a moment, I think.
I'll hold the fort.
Bev raised this story earlier, and I'm not a dad,
terrible.
but it shocks me. Tell us about sleeping pills.
Yeah, so the prescription rate has doubled in 7 years for children on sleeping tablets, which is just astonishing. I mean, children should not be having sleeping tablets at all.
Under any circumstances.
Yeah. I mean, this just didn't happen in the past, did it? It was a case of, you know, children were tired out from running around. You know, nobody would have ever dreamt of giving a child a sleeping tablet, and I just don't know what's going on.
Carol Malone must have slept in this morning.
I did not sleep in. I did not sleep in. I asked what time we're coming on.
Sleeping pills.
And I went to the loo, and I came, there was nobody there. I was just on my own, I was on my toes.
Paranoid, are you, Carol?
What?
Are you feeling paranoid?
No, not at all. Are you?
Lovely to see you, Carol. We've started with this children being prescribed sleeping pills.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a world in which your parents would have said to you, do you know what, Carol, to get sleep tonight, we're going to medicate you?
I know. Do you know what they used to give me? I used to get a bit of butter with sugar on it. I don't know why, but that's what they gave me. It was soothing, I guess.
Yeah.
But you know, I was reading this stuff today that there's 154 babies under the age of 1 year old being given these pills. Now, you know, a lot of the experts are saying, oh, it's the stresses of modern day life. A baby is not under stress of modern day life.
Parents who haven't accepted that having a new baby involves having broken sleep.
Of course.
And some babies never sleep.
Of course. But, you know, what doctor gives a little baba, you know, a sleeping pill? And, you know, I think that you're setting kids up for a lifelong addiction to pills, thinking a pill can cure everything.
I've had some of these children in my house, so when my daughters have had sleepovers with their mates, who might be 11, 12, 13, they arrive with their sleeping tablets.
What?
I'm not joking. And mainly it's because so many of them are on ADHD medication in the day, that in order to bring themselves down to sleep at night, they're on a kind of, what do you call it, like a treadmill of medication.
And where do they get the drugs from?
Well, they get them from the GPs, from the doctor. And I think there was separate stats in the story. I don't know whether Sam's mentioned while I was in the loo. Separate stats saying that there's thousands of teenagers being hospitalised for addiction to sleeping medication. It's not just kids of 11 on tablets. And, you know, I've got to tell you, I'm blaming parents here. Do not give your kids the tablet or the phone just before. Don't let them have it in the bedroom.
It should, after dinner, 7 o'clock.
Take it away from them.
You've got to do your homework. Do the old-fashioned way. Look it up in a book.
You know, I was in. I'm sorry. It is the old-fashioned way.
They can't go on a device because it means they can't go to sleep.
The trouble is, their homework is on a device. The homework is set by the school on portals
the schools
online.
are part of the problem then.
The schools are a massive part of this problem.
But it's interesting. I was in the dentist recently, my lovely dentist, and she said I grind my teeth at night. That's the stress, anxiety, whatever, I suppose. And she's
Andrew Pearce is your best mate. I do that. I almost do that. I only have to sit next to him.
Seriously, well, I understand your pain perfectly.
To have a whole new set of teeth because his dad.
Well, you've had a whole new set. I have. Mine are still my own. What she said to me was, do not look at the telly before you, like an hour and a half before you go to bed.
Light, isn't it?
No, it's the blue light. Blue light. He's right on with it, isn't he? It's the blue light. And I find that really hard. Not even as I'm a grown-up and I'm an adult, and I should. But I love watching rubbish telly before I go to bed. But I have to stop it if I want to sleep properly and not be anxious.
And it is the parents' responsibility.
Yeah, kids should also be physically tired.
Yes,
they're not. They're sat around on devices. Yeah. They're not physically tired. You go to sleep if you're physically tired.
They don't cycle to school. They don't walk to school.
No,
they take
it in a car. They get to school. They sit around. They don't do.
What are we doing to our kids?
It's really difficult. Yeah. I find parenting so hard at the moment because it feels like everywhere you turn there's no other adult helping you to raise your children. Even at school, sport is now often optional for kids. They don't want to do it. The teachers can't be bothered to make them, and you can't make a child do anything anymore. It's very unfashionable to make a child do anything they don't want to do.
Why isn't school sports compulsory?
Because
it used
they can't
to be.
bother. The teachers don't want the fight. And then you'll have a parent in the background saying, oh, well, she's very tired when she comes home from school, so don't make her run around the field. She's very tired. All she wants to do is sit on her phone when she gets home from school.
I remember.
Yeah, because they are addicted. Yeah. They're addicted, and like an addict.
Well, it goes back
you have to break the addiction.
It goes back to this. We keep talking about politicians. Rishi's talked about it. Other people have talked about it. Should smartphones be banned?
Completely.
I think it's too late, though. It's too late. It's not going to happen.
No, but it is happening, Sam.
People want it to happen, but...
They're talking about it in France at 13.
But kids, honestly, kids are smarter than we are, and they will get round it. I mean, they will have burner phones, they'll have little phones in their pocket. They'll, you know, like in prison, they have these tiny, tiny phones that they sneak in. Kids will be using those. You know, they will get round it.
As an alternative,
get round it, though.
As an alternative to that, I talked to 3 kids recently, 1 5, 1 7, 1 11, and their school was taking their phones off them as they were walking, and all 3 of them got it. And even from the little baby at 5 to they said, we're distracted by them, we can't learn when they're there, and we end up talking to the phone rather than talking to our mates.
So when
at
they
school.
do their homework at home, when they're doing their homework, Malone, do they then have to be on that device?
Well, maybe they do, but if you're checking a fact, I don't think that's a terrible thing. However, if you're spending your life on social media and talking to other people as opposed to physically talking to them, I think that's the problem. Kids aren't as social now as they used to be. You know, when I meet a kid now that can talk to an adult, I think good parenting because the parent has taught them how to talk to people older than them. Lots of kids don't. They look down all the time. They don't want to. Maybe it's just me, but but I'm hoping
Carol.
it's not.
No, you're right, and they don't because they don't really talk to each other.
Yeah.
They go out. We did trick or treat at our house last year, and I had all these kids at the house, about 13, and I'd gone to loads of effort, and they all sat around on the sofa, all of them just like this, not even playing. And I went right, and I got the trick or treat basket, but put the sweets in, and I went round and took all the phones off them. And said, right, and I've locked them in the garage. I said, right, go and play. And guess what? Within about 10 minutes, they'd worked out how to play.
Yeah.
It's so depressing. It's so hard.
But it's right, isn't it, that children within the same family text each other? In the same house?
Yes,
They text each other?
from upstairs because they can't be bothered to walk up. So how are they tired?
You don't shout, come down for your tea now, you ring them. And we wonder why they can't get to sleep.
But you know, I keep on asking myself, every time I read that this is all to do with the stresses and strains and anxieties of modern life, what stresses and strains do kids today have that we didn't have? At least they get to eat. And I'm not joking, I'm not doing the I lived in a shoebox nonsense, but, you know, when I was a kid... No, I wasn't. But when I was a kid, my mum and dad had a number of jobs to make sure we could eat every week. That was a bit of a stress for them, frankly, and a bit of a stress for me, although you wouldn't think so, because I managed to find eating later on in life.
That was the butter with the sugar in it that was giving you every night, Carol.
That's true, actually,
right, moving on. Let's talk about this Rwanda blocked by civil servants. Both of you.
Goodness sake, honestly, it's the FDA, which are the senior civil servants, the top civil servants, the well-paid, the ones who have the power, and they have consulted their union. They say that actually the Rwanda deal goes against international law, and so they feel very uncomfortable.
But we don't know if it will yet.
Yeah, and
the European Court may not intervene anyway.
Absolutely, and so you know, but who governs? You know, is it our government or is it the court in Strasbourg?
We were talking to a lawyer, Sam Felton, and he kept going, ministers, this minister. I said, hang on, you keep saying minister, Sam. This has gone through the Houses of Parliament. It's gone through the Commons. It's gone through the House of Lords. It's got royal assent. We've done it the proper way.
It's all there. It's all there. But civil servants, in the Home Office particularly, are very resistant to many of the policies of the government of the day, and they would rather defer to a court in Strasbourg than adhere to what our government has passed.
Did you think, Sam, that Dave Penman, the FDA General Secretary, he said today that this plan, the Rwanda plan, actually undermines the integrity and impartiality of the civil service? We do not have an impartial civil service. We have a civil service that is working against the good of the people in this country.
Just before we go, we have to go to the news, ladies. Should we have a look at this brochure in the picture of Princess Charlotte?
Here it is.
On her birthday.
Doesn't she look like
oh my God, she looks...
There we go.
She looks like no, she looks like Wills,
She does look like her dad. It's been released by the Princess and Prince of Wales in just the last few moments. There she is.
Thank God she's got Kate's hair, though. She's definitely got Kate's hair.
You'd rather have William's face and Kate's hair.
Absolutely. Yeah, other way around. Go.
Right, here's the latest headlines with Sophia.
Thanks, Bev. It's 10:31. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. 36-year-old Marcus Aurelio Odwini Monzo is due to appear in court charged with the murder of 14-year-old Daniel Angerin following a sword attack in north-east London. Daniel was fatally injured as he walked to school on Tuesday morning. 4 other people, including 2 police officers, were injured. The Met Police say Monzo from Newham is a dual Spanish-Brazilian national. He has now arrived at Westminster Magistrates Court. Voters are heading to the polls today in a series of local elections across the country. There are elections in 107 local authorities across England, as well as 11 mayoral races. A by-election will elect a new Blackpool South MP following the resignation of former Conservative Scott Benton. Police and crime commissioners will also be chosen. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has been out campaigning today. Meanwhile, Labour leader Keir Starmer was at the polling station, and Reform Party leader Richard Tice was also out casting his vote this morning. Scotland's longest-serving Deputy First Minister is expected to announce that he's launching a campaign to become SNP leader and First Minister later. John Swinney has received support from senior members of the SNP since First Minister Humza Yousaf announced on Monday he would step down. The Perthshire North MSP, who served as Nicola Sturgeon's deputy for almost 9 years, will make a statement in Edinburgh later today. Former SNP member Stuart Crawford doesn't have confidence in John Swinney. The Prince and Princess of Wales have released a photograph of their daughter to mark her 9th birthday. Catherine took the photo of Princess Charlotte with a beaming smile. It comes as the family continues to navigate Catherine's cancer treatment. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2529 and €1.1698. The price of gold is £1,840 and 50 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 8,150 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
We can ask this lad.
Very good morning. We were just listening to that breaking news then. Of course, we had this horrendous event in Hainaut 2 days ago, and the perpetrator, the suspect, has now been named.
Marcus Aurelio Odwini Monzo, 36. He's just arrived at court. He's going to be charged over the death of Daniel Angerin, who was only 14, poor love. He was on his way to hospital. He actually died in hospital. He was just a few yards from his home.
Horrendous.
When he was killed. What a lovely looking boy, isn't he?
What a shame.
Bright boy, religious family.
Yeah.
And they scrimped and scraped to send him to that private school in East London, Bancrofts, which is, of course, where Grace O'Malley Kumar
also went.
who died in the Nottingham attacks last year, and she also went there. I mean, so that's a terrible shock for that school, isn't it?
OK, up next this morning, TV personality and Apprentice star Tom Skinner is going to join us on the show to discuss the tea time turmoil faced by thousands of parents across Britain. If you've ever been fighting with your kids about what they're going to eat for tea, or your grandchildren, you don't want to miss this. It's Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Holding. Buses replaced trains between Scunthorpe and Doncaster after a landslip. In Flintshire, the A541 remains closed each way along Denby Road in Mould after a fire broke out on Tuesday afternoon. In Northamptonshire, the A14 is partly blocked westbound by an accident between junctions 9 and 8 near Kettering, causing queues. In Monmouthshire, on the A465 head to the Valleys Road, the inside lane's closed eastbound after an accident between the Cavilan roundabout and the Llanfoist interchange, causing queues. The M25 from Essex into Kent is partly blocked clockwise by an accident on the QE2 bridge, causing queues. There's also a lane closure each way just off junction 5 for the M26 for emergency repairs, with delays almost back to junction 4 at Orpington. And in Surrey, the A3 is closed each way through the Hindhead Tunnel because of a technical problem causing delays as you divert. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Prince Harry, remember him? He appears to have fully turned his back on the UK as he listed his primary residence as the United States for the very first time in papers published yesterday. So interestingly, Harry listed the date on the formal US residency forms as the 29th of June 2023, last year. So that was the very same day he was kicked out of Frogmore Cottage in Great Windsor Park by his dad, the King. Charlotte, thank you for joining me. Okay. Are we just putting two and two together here with the significance of this date? Because there were stories during the rounds today that Harry chose that date specifically because he was so hurt about being booted out of Frogmore by his dad.
Yeah, I mean, to me it feels like he's trolling his dad a bit, because he could have said that he's been a US resident since 2020 when he quit the UK and moved to the States, but instead he chose the exact day that his dad kicked him out of Frogmore. But the reason his dad kicked him out of Frogmore was because he'd slagged off Camilla in Spare. And, you know, and his dad, apparently it was a really difficult decision for Charles, because, of course, no dad wants to kick their son out of their home. But he went beyond the pale. So Charles took the difficult decision to say, look, Frogmore's been empty for years anyway. We've spent £2.4 million doing it up for you. And now you've, you know, insulted our family in your book, Spare. Why is he so hung up on Frogmore? Because this is the country he was desperate to get away from. This is a house he didn't particularly want to live in and, in fact, didn't live in.
Well, he was forced, by the way, to pay £2.5 million to fund the renovations after it all kicked off. I mean, would that have anything to do with...
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that sort of galvanised his anger towards the whole situation. He thought he was getting a fantastic freebie. And there was, you know, there were a few reports at the time that Meghan actually thought she was moving into Frogmore House, which is a much grander property. And she sort of felt a bit sort of tricked or confused and hadn't quite realised it was actually a cottage, which is only a mere, I think it was only a mere 8 bedrooms.
GB News is Britain's election channel. And from tonight...
the people decide.
As the country heads to the polls in a rush of elections.
We'll take you through the night as the first results come in. And we'll pick up at breakfast
with the very best guests and analysis.
And on the weekend, the results won't stop, and neither will we.
We'll explore what it all means for you as we look ahead to the general election.
Continuing coverage live from tonight at midnight on GB News.
We are going to go now to Edinburgh, live pictures, where John Swinney, who served as Deputy First Minister of Scotland from 2014 to 23, is launching his campaign to be the SNP leader.
So he's John Swinney. Let me tell you about him, Bev. He was leader of the SNP, I think, between 2001 and 2004. Utterly useless, boring, dull. And do you know who got rid of him?
What do you really think, Andy?
Yeah. Do you know who got rid of him?
No.
007 himself. Sean Connery, one of the biggest, most generous supporters of the SNP 20 years ago, from his home in the Bahamas, said he's got to go because he's not cutting the mustard. So within months, John Swinney had gone and been replaced by Sir Sean Connery's great mate, Alex Salmond. Now, as it happened, it was the right call, because 3 years later, Alex Salmond became First Minister. But 007 retired, came out of retirement, so kill off John Swinney. And now, why do they think now, 20 years later, he's going to be any better? Because he isn't. He's dull and grey and boring, and he's another continuity candidate because he's close to Nicola Sturgeon and close to Hamza Yusuf, who stood down. Nicknamed Hamza, useless, of course, not by the media, but by his own flipping sister.
Will Sean Connery get involved this time?
Difficult, because he's dead.
I thought you might say that.
From the grave.
I couldn't remember.
From the grave. From the grave.
When did Sean Connery die?
A couple of years ago. And I actually, do you know, I interviewed him when I was on The Times. He was a really, really nice bloke.
Oh, I bet. Well, clearly involved in politics as well, wielding influence.
Yeah.
Right, moving on. A new report shows that nearly a third of parents admit that they get stressed at tea time with their children. A third? What are the other 2/3 doing?
This one's stressed with their children at breakfast and lunch as well.
Oh, yeah. Some of the top frustrations are kids refusing to eat what their parents made, or the children giving the food to the dog. Can you imagine? What would your parents have done if you gave your food to the dog?
Well, we didn't have a dog, but but tantrums at tea time. Who better to talk about this than the TV personality, the entrepreneur and dad of 3, Tom Skinner, who you may remember, of course, from Friends. Tom, you're a dad of 3.
Tom.
I'm not a dad. Bevan, you can have a great chat about this, but tell us, how stressful is tea time in your home?
Well, do you know what? I'm very lucky that we don't have no stress in my house. But British Lion Eggs have been doing a little bit of research and they found out 1 in 5 parents have just given up cooking altogether because it's hard work, or they're going down the freezer holes and getting the same food, chicken nuggets, pizzas over and over again. But let's listen, we got to think about the kids, we've got to think about what they're eating, and we've got to make it a bit more fun.
Tom, how old are your kids?
So my little boy Emery, he's 3, and my twin girls Darla and Roma are 11 months old.
Oh, OK, so maybe you're not quite in the areas yet where you've got all 3 of them arguing back with you, Tom, and I wish you luck. But what should we be doing?
One at the minute.
What should we be doing then as parents to make it calmer and make it fun? Because it is really stressful. Parents are tired at the end of the day. They've been working all day. They've probably sat in a horrible commute. What do we do?
Well, look, listen, we should do a little bit more cooking, and we all forget about this, but eggs. Eggs are so easy. They're full of nutrition. There's so many meals you can do. Like last week, me and my little boy, he's 3 years old, I made toad in the hole. And I've got him to sit on the counter, crack an egg, put in the flour, little bit of milk, mix it up, cut in a couple of sausages, in the oven, little bit of veg, job done. Do you know what I mean? But there's so many meals you can do. Scrambled eggs, fritters, and they're cheap, they're affordable, and they take absolute seconds to make. It's simple.
It's such a good point, because parents get lectured all the time, like, plan ahead with your meals, and I can't plan ahead. I don't know what I'm doing this afternoon. I certainly cannot plan a week of meals. And eggs are my go-to staple. You're absolutely right. Quick scrambled eggs, quick omelette, something like that. And actually, nutritious food for kids does not have to be complicated or expensive, does it, Tom?
Of course it don't. Like my little twinnies, right? So I do sliced avocado, bit of scrambled eggs. Half of it goes on the floor, half of it goes in their gob, but they love it, and it literally takes minutes. You know what I mean?
And Tom, do you have a rule at the tea table with your little boy? I know he's only 3. He's probably already got a tablet, has he, or some form of device?
Yeah, so he's got a little iPad, but he's only allowed to use it after dinner.
Right.
So, and I only try and let him have it. To be fair, he don't have it every single day, but maybe 30 minutes once or twice a week. I try and keep him off it because I don't want him stuck to it all day.
I mean, I'm surprised that it's only 1/3 of parents are stressed by meal times. I would have thought it would have been 100% of parents that are stressed by meal times.
Yeah, I mean, that's a bit of reason. I mean, listen, we all know what it's like when you get indoors from work, you're cream crackered, and you think, right, I've got to get the kids something to eat. Do you know what I mean? So I think just making it simple. Like, you haven't got to go and get the old pizzas and the chicken nuggets and all the unhealthy bits and pieces. Like, there are easy meals, including eggs, that take no time at all, and you've got so many different options. So many different options. Make it fun and get the kids involved.
And is it important, Tom, that Dad and Mum have the same food with the little one, or not?
I mean, yeah. Look. What we in my house, we all sort of try and make something that we can all have together. You know, like I said last week, I've done a toad in the hole. And I do a big pasta dish. One of my favourites, you're going to think it's disgusting, but it takes minutes. Is tuna, boiled egg, and pasta, a little bit of butter. Mix it all up. It's nice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you'll sit around together. And it's nutritional and it's cheap.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we ask you another story, Tom? We all were shocked and horrified by what happened in Hainault, which is not far from where you're based in Essex. Your gym that you run has been groundbreaking, Tom, in that it's a place where young men or women, I suppose, can
anonymously
leave a knife because they might be scared to take a knife to a police station because they think they're going to get a criminal record. Can you tell us more about that and how successful it's been?
Yeah. So obviously I own a boxing gym called Bosch Gym, and look, there's a real knife crime pandemic in London, surrounding areas out to Essex, and I just thought, you know what, look, not enough things are being done. So in my gym, I said, look, if you're scared, you need talk, you need advice, come down to my gym, Bosch Gym. We've got an amnesty box. I will feed you. I will give you lessons. I've got trainers in there. I'll do it for free. I've spent 20,000 quid this year of my own money doing it, you know. And I've been I've been I've chatted to the council. There's haven't got any money for funding to help young kids, and there's an age from like the ages of 13 to 17 where they ain't old enough to get jobs or go in the pubs, and they're too cool to hang around the park. So we need to find things. And listen,
they need occupation, don't they? We got to keep them. We got to keep them busy. We've got to keep them busy, Tom. And we are unfortunately very busy. But it's been lovely to talk to you this morning. Thank you so much.
Well done you with that scheme, Tom. Well done you with that scheme.
Go home and make some eggs for the kids. Couldn't agree with. Right, thanks,
good luck
Tom.
with the twins.
So much, Tom Skinner.
What a good bloke. That's a great scheme.
It's a great scheme.
And you need more of it, because they're always announcing amnesties for knife guns, and you think, who's going to take a knife to a police station, you idiots?
Absolutely.
They won't do. You want people like Tom Skinner.
Happy birthday, Princess Charlotte.
Her Royal Highness to you.
She's celebrating her 9th birthday. This wonderful picture has been released by the Prince and Princess of Wales. I can't call a child Her Royal Highness. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some places seeing some pleasant warm May sunshine today, but staying fairly cloudy in the south, and in eastern areas a chilly breeze off the North Sea. Had some big thunderstorms through the night across the south. Still a few heavy downpours here and there this morning. Parts of southern England, the Midlands and South Wales in particular. The rain will ease a little bit through the day, but staying fairly dull and damp across the southwest. Some brighter skies for East Anglia, Northern England, Northern Ireland and a good chunk of Scotland. Western Scotland in particular, 21, maybe 22 degrees, but much cooler on these eastern coasts with that breeze coming in from the sea, and cooler with the cloud and the showery rain across the southwestern quarter. That rain will continue well into this evening as well. And then later in the night, we need to look at further pulses of heavy rain, potentially further thunderstorms coming into parts of East Anglia. Further north, it generally stays dry. There'll be some clearer spells, but quite a bit of cloud. That'll keep the temperatures up 9 to 11 Celsius. On to tomorrow, and it's a similar story. We're going to start pretty grey over the Midlands and Wales with some outbreaks of rain, but heavier rain coming into parts of eastern England, so a different feel across northeast England in particular. Again, the potential for 1 or 2 thunderstorms. Brighter day in southwest England. Again, chilly on some of these North Sea coasts with temperatures really struggling under the cloud. But yet again, if you like warm sunshine, western Scotland will be the place to be.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Now, Beverly's very excited, even though she's not been invited to the birthday party of Her Royal Highness Princess Charlotte. She is, of course, third in line to the throne. She is, of course, the daughter of the Prince and Princess of Wales.
Look, it's nice. It's a 9-year-old girl who's having a birthday. Royal fams from around the globe.
Imagine my old mate Kevin Maguire saying, 9-year-old girl has birthday. Who cares?
I love the royal family now.
So do I.
I was always a little bit ambivalent, but I think you get it with age, don't you? And also, they are our British identity. And so we lose them at our peril.
They're a bit of escapism too.
And don't we need it?
And they're cute, those kids.
They are.
And I like the fact that the boys misbehave at the photo shoots.
I
think it's
love
terrific.
Louis. I have a real soft spot for Louis. Well, we've had this picture released this morning of Princess Charlotte on her 9th birthday, and our royal correspondent Cameron Walker joins us to bask in the glow of a 9-year-old girl having a birthday. Go on, Cameron.
Absolutely. Happy birthday to Princess Charlotte of Wales. Of course, Kensington Palace released the photograph in the last hour on their social media channels. It was taken by the Princess of Wales, Princess Charlotte's mother, in the grounds of Windsor Castle in the last couple of days, and it is a very modern way that they released it. Again, similar to Prince Louis last week, they released it on social media channels first, thanking the public directly for their kind messages of support for Princess Charlotte's birthday, unlike what they usually would do, which is release it to the press under embargo the day before, so the papers can have it the next morning. But just looking at this picture here, her face, Princess Charlotte's face, it reminds me of the late Queen Elizabeth II, and also her father, Prince William. It seems to be the same smile, which clearly shows that they're a family, of course. And she's got some nice kind of braided bracelets on her right wrist as well, looking in details in the photograph. But she's very feisty, this 9-year-old girl. I think she's perhaps a little bit more outgoing than her brother, Prince George. Princess Catherine described her actually recently as the one in charge. She was spotted reminding her older brother, George, who of course is future king, to bow to the coffin of their great-grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, back in September 2022. She's also been known to keep her younger brother, Prince Louis, in check on a number of occasions. Prince Louis was, let's say, over-enthusiastic with his waving to the crowds in the carriage during Trooping the Colour last year, and Princess Charlotte just very calmly put her hand on his to calm him down a little bit. And on the balcony, Prince Louis accidentally smacks his older sister in the head, which didn't go down too well with Princess Charlotte, but she clearly knew she was on display and did not make too much of a fuss and kind of let it slide. Perhaps in private, there was a bit more of a reckoning to be had with her younger brother. But no, Princess Charlotte, of course, turning 9, third in line to the throne.
Cameron, quite a lot of coverage for the fact Queen Camilla at the Buckingham Palace reception yesterday, just the day after we saw the King back on official engagements for the first time, saying, I've been trying to hold the King back because we know he's raring to go, he wants to be seen like his mother, and that's Camilla admitting that she's struggling to tell him really to pace himself a little, because he's still undergoing treatment, of course, for cancer.
Yeah, and I think the Queen isn't the only one who's been trying to tell him to perhaps take it a little bit easy. I understand the King has been incredibly frustrated and really wanting to get back out and about on public engagements, but of course it's all subject to medical advice and probably by extension his wife's advice as well, Her Majesty the Queen. Peter Phillips, her nephew, of course, was saying that the King very, very frustrated that he's not back out on public duties, but now he is, looking towards summer, very optimistic.
OK, thank you, Cameron. Cameron Walker. There. You've all been getting in touch this morning to tell us what you're going to do on your bank holiday weekend. We will get to some of those messages. Bank holiday weekend.
Yeah,
what are you doing Monday?
I'm not working.
I am.
More
I will
you.
be here on Monday morning. I'm working.
Magnificent work ethic.
Right, a story that was caught our eye this morning is about the number of children being prescribed sleeping pills has doubled in 7 years. Why? This is Britain's Newsroom. On GB News, Alex Deakin has your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some places seeing some pleasant warm May sunshine today, but staying fairly cloudy in the south, and in eastern areas a chilly breeze off the North Sea. Had some big thunderstorms through the night across the south. Still a few heavy downpours here and there this morning. Parts of southern England, the Midlands and South Wales in particular. The rain will ease a little bit through the day, but staying fairly dull and damp across the southwest. Some brighter skies for East Anglia, North Northern England, Northern Ireland and a good chunk of Scotland. Western Scotland in particular, 21, maybe 22 degrees, but much cooler on these eastern coasts with that breeze coming in from the sea, and cooler with the cloud and the showery rain across the southwestern quarter. That rain will continue well into this evening as well. And then later in the night, we need to look at further pulses of heavy rain, potentially further thunderstorms coming into parts of East Anglia. Further north, it generally stays dry. There'll be some clearer spells, but quite a bit of cloud. That'll keep the temperatures up 9 to 11 Celsius. On to tomorrow, and it's a similar story. We're going to start pretty grey over the Midlands and Wales with some outbreaks of rain, but heavier rain coming into parts of eastern England, so a different feel across northeast England in particular. Again, the potential for 1 or 2 thunderstorms. Brighter day in southwest England. Again, chilly on some of these North Sea coasts with temperatures really struggling under the cloud, but yet again, if you like warm sunshine, western Scotland will be the place to be.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We've blown the budget by giving you the chance to win a totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For a chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News with Dubes & Co from 6, followed by Farage at 7. At 8, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg addresses the state of the nation. And at 9, join Patrick Christie's Tonight, followed by Headliners at 11. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel. And from tonight,
the people decide.
As the country heads to the polls in a rush of elections.
We'll take you through the night as the first results come in.
And we'll pick up at breakfast
with the very best guests and analysis.
And on the weekend, the results won't stop, and neither will we.
We'll explore what it all means for you as we look ahead to the general election.
Continuing coverage live from tonight at midnight on GB News.
– 11 a.m. on Thursday, the 2nd of May. This is Britain's News. I'm on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So, about 300 people, I think that figure is greater now, have been arrested during police crackdowns on pro-Palestinian protests and groups at universities in America. Would you like to see our police taking such strict action here?
And closer to home, students in Leeds, Newcastle, Bristol, and it's spreading elsewhere, are now protesting outside campus buildings about the war in Gaza.
And a royal happy birthday. Princess Charlotte celebrates her 9th birthday this morning. This lovely photo has been released. Don't even start talking about whether it's been edited. I can't have that conversation again.
So I'm bowing to the princess because she's HRH. Rwanda legal challenge. Just one migrant has voluntarily gone to the African country, and a leading civil service union, guess what, is threatening to use the courts to try to scupper the plans for any more to go. Of course they are.
And we're going to be talking to a pharmacist about this shocking story about sleeping pills for children.
Including babies.
Nearly 750,000 sleeping pills for children being prescribed in this country. Why? Let us know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. First, though, the very latest news with Sophia Wensler.
Thank you, Bev. Good morning. It's 11:01. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. 36-year-old Marcus Aurelio Ordwini Monzo is due to appear in court charged with the murder of 14-year-old Daniel Anjorin following a sword attack in north-east London. Daniel was fatally injured as he walked to school on Tuesday morning. 4 other people, including 2 police officers, were injured. The Met Police say Monzo from Newham is a dual Spanish-Brazilian national. He has now arrived at Westminster Magistrates Court. 711 people were detected crossing the English Channel on Wednesday, the highest number on a single day so far this year, according to Home Office figures. It brings the total number who've crossed the Channel so far this year to nearly 8,300. That's 34% higher than a total at the same point last year. In other news, voters are heading to the polls today in a series of local elections across the country. There are elections in 107 local authorities across England, as well as 11 mayoral races. A by-election will elect a new Blackpool South MP following the resignation of former Conservative Scott Benton. Police and crime commissioners will also be chosen. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has been out campaigning today. Meanwhile, Labour leader Keir Starmer was at the polling station earlier, and Reform Party leader Richard Tice was also out casting his vote this morning. Former Deputy First Minister John Swinney has confirmed he's running to succeed Humza Yousaf as both SNP leader and Scotland's First Minister. If successful, it will be the second time Mr Swinney, who was Deputy First Minister for more than 8 years under Nicola Sturgeon, has led his party. He previously held the post between 2000 and 2004. Speaking in Edinburgh a short time ago, he confirmed he would be running for First Minister.
Build on the work of the SNP government to create a modern, diverse, dynamic Scotland that will ensure opportunity for all of her citizens. I want to unite the SNP and unite Scotland for independence.
Now, today could be the warmest day of the year so far, after warnings for heavy rain and thunderstorms overnight across southern parts of England and Wales. 2 buildings in Sussex were damaged by lightning strikes overnight, according to West Sussex Fire and Rescue. A care home in Elmer was struck with damage to its roof, while a university building in Chichester sustained damage to its roof and power. Might cause travel disruption and some flooding, leading to difficult driving conditions on some roads. Students have set up sit-in camps at some UK universities to protest Israel's war against Hamas. Students in Leeds, Newcastle and Bristol set up tents outside campus buildings in protest against the war in Gaza. It comes amid violent clashes between the police and protesters at universities in the US. About 300 people were arrested during police crackdowns on demonstrations at US universities yesterday. And hundreds of police descended on the UCLA campus as protests continue there today. And Donald Trump's been threatened with jail as he returns back to court later. The former US president will face another hearing on further alleged breaches of a gag order. Earlier in the week, he was fined over £7,000 for multiple breaches of different gag orders, with the judge suggesting he could be jailed if further breaches continued. US political analyst Eric Ham says Donald Trump is in a face-off with the judge today.
I think what will certainly send many people in a tizzy is, in fact, if there's a way to actually jail Donald Trump. There are many who believe that it's nearly impossible to actually place a former president in jail because of the fact that there is a Secret Service duty to actually to protect him. So, of course, many people would be watching to see if, in fact, the judge is willing to go that far. And I think what we're seeing here is Donald Trump and this judge in a face-off to actually determine who actually wins, because I think what we're seeing take place is a game of chicken between both of these men right now.
And the Prince and Princess of Wales have released a photograph of their daughter to mark her 9th birthday. Catherine took the photo of Princess Charlotte with a beaming smile. It comes as the family continues to navigate Catherine's cancer treatment. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
It's 11:06. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner. Lots of you getting in touch at home about this sleeping pill story. Adrian, who is a GB News member, thank you, Adrian, for your continued and important support. Says schools can't make kids do anything restrictive. Practice has gone mad. I hated PE, but I had to do it or you met the wrath of the teacher. And Lee makes a great point. Unfortunately, I think the 60-year-olds onwards are the last generation that was so naturally brought up. But unfortunately, this is progress and we have to accept it. But you don't have to get used to it.
It wasn't just mum and dads as well who were strict. It was the schools.
Yeah.
The teachers were strict at school.
And they work with the parents, and now it feels like the parents are against the schools so often.
Yeah.
We're talking about this because children in this country are in the grips of a sleep crisis. The number of pills dished out has doubled in just 7 years.
Apparently, it's the stresses of modern-day life, including widespread use of phones and tablets, have left youngsters unable to switch off at night. So why are they giving them, though, to babies? How can they be?
Let's ask a pharmacist, Thorin Govind. Good morning, Thorin. Thank you so much for joining us. You're a pharmacist, and so you are the person who sees the parents when they come to you with their prescription for their child. Are you often aware that it is a sleep prescription, like for the child? Is that obvious to you?
Well, whenever we receive a prescription, we're always assessing the age of the need. We're asking parents. I always involve parents in discussions about medication. But I mean, this is a national issue that we're hearing about here, and 154 of the prescriptions prescribed were to those under 1 year old. This really is, worrying to me that we're having such young people struggling with sleep. I think this is part of some of the pandemic issues that are continuing to boil over. If we think about the pandemic, it's had a big impact on people's lives, children's lives as well. And it just make me sad to see the numbers being prescribed here. But NHS guidelines say we wouldn't usually have sleep medication prescribed to kids unless it's for short-term treatment. So really, it sounds like these cases are extreme need. But even so, it's not a happy picture, is it?
No. Thorin, if it was in your pharmacy and you see the prescription, would you be aware that the prescription for the sleeping aid was for a baby under the age of 1? And if you were aware, would you have a conversation with the parent to say, this is not advisable?
So my usual practice is if it's a child, I would always query with, we're really, really hot on querying prescriptions for children. Or I find out what the prescriber has told the parent about that medication, what they're expecting it for. I ask them what dose they are expecting to provide to the child, because ultimately, in that position, you've got a parent who is going to be doing the administration and making sure that a child takes the medication.
And the temptation would be, if they don't go to sleep, I'll just give them a bit more, just give them a bit more.
But, Thorin, could you say no to the parent? I'm not going to prescribe this.
So fundamentally, with any prescription, I have a duty of care. So if there's anything that I have concerns about, I raise that with the prescriber and with the parents. That would be part of my duty as a healthcare professional. I'm not here giving out prescriptions here, there and everywhere. It's not a free-for-all when you come into a pharmacy, because we're regulated healthcare professionals. So it's my duty to ask the question as to whether a prescription is needed or not.
And in the case of a baby, could you imagine any scenario in which a baby needs that medication? I can't help but think that medication is not for the baby, it's for the parents who don't want to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and do a breastfeed or do a bottle feed or whatever it is.
Well, in my practice, I have to say, I have never seen this scenario of sleep medication for a child, for a baby. I have not seen it, but I would be questioning it. I would be querying it. We do get people coming into the pharmacy asking for certain medications which are known to induce sleep. And we ask a lot of questions about that because we're concerned that they could be coming in to buy those to get their child to go to sleep. And that's buying that over the counter. So I'm aware of these issues. We are aware of the ways that people may use medication in different ways to how they are actually there. So we're always on the lookout. I'm asking questions. That's part of my job. And I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't do that.
What are the side effects of a sleeping medication for a child? Because we're all sitting here, you and I are assuming this is bad. I think it is. I think it's bad because it develops, I think it develops a relationship between that child and medication as the solution to their problems. I think you teach that dangerously to children, actually. But what side effects might there be?
Well, I hate to say this, but one of those side effects is drowsiness, and you'll see that written on the packaging, but we have to say it to patients. And it depends on different people, different ages as well, and even in an individual. If you took a sleeping aid, that would impact you differently to how it would impact me. Obviously not for a child, but if I'd had alcohol, that would probably have a higher impact on me than if you hadn't had alcohol. If even in terms of just the grogginess when you wake up, even for a child, they will experience that differently. But this also comes back down to prevention. What are we educating patients, parents, and even schools with when it comes to sleep? Because it's all part of what are we teaching children? 30 to 60 minutes before you go to bed, you shouldn't be using iPads. You shouldn't be using technology. But I see this even when we're out and about. People do give their children an iPad to almost look after them whilst they're getting on with their day-to-day. It has a place, but I don't think it has a complete place in the world. We learn so much by looking out of the prams, don't they, and seeing the world going by and learning things. But are they getting that from an iPad?
Thorin, what does this say about doctors who are making these prescriptions to the 154 children under the age of 1 and to all the...
Three-quarters of a million under 16.
Three-quarters of a million under the age of 16. Is this doctors being lazy, just get the problem off their hands? Or... because it seems to me a bit more serious. I think it's irresponsible.
Well, it is, I would say 154 is not a huge number if you think about the number of babies and children born in this country, etc. But I would also say it's a really difficult decision for a prescriber. And I think that by the same token that I go into all those details and ask those questions when it comes to children, prescribers are more careful when it comes to children. And we do have to have this awareness as well that we're treating a child, and we also have to get that information from an adult. It's not easy to communicate for a child that they're not sleeping, is it? Or why they're not sleeping, in the same way that I might talk to you about how you might be, might have got up early and you're not having the same sleep routine every day. It is hard to train children to get into sleep routines. I completely empathise with parents. Even when I go and see nieces and nephews and I go and I'm leaving the house, I always try and say, send them to bed and then we'll say goodbye after, because you can really disrupt sleep routines quite easily for children.
Yeah, very true. Well, brilliant pharmacist there, Thorin Govind, full of common sense and caution. Yeah. And that's what we need with children.
But what does it say about these GPs? Look, half the time we can't get to see them, but frankly, some of these parents, I don't think they're being helped by these GPs.
They're not. But then the GPs are probably younger themselves and they don't have an adult or a grandparent in their life. My mum is the one who's empowered me to say, shut the door, go make a cup of tea, and if they're still awake, then tell them, go to sleep. And then again, you shut the door. And my kids have always slept really well, but I have my mum telling me, my mum will have 6 little grandchildren under the age of 9 in her spare room in her house. And guess what? Those 6 little girls all go to sleep because they're more scared of Nana coming back in than they are of staying awake. And we need a little bit of that good old-fashioned, kind discipline with love. And it's like today's parents are so worried about getting it wrong that they're always capitulating to the children.
Yeah, I just can't conceive of sticking a sleeping pill in a 9-year-old's mouth because they can't sleep or they're having nightmares.
Absolutely.
And get the kids off the devices at least 2 hours before they go to sleep.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that that's you're too wired when you go to
That's
go to
right.
sleep.
One of the messages says, so what if people are tired? How are they going to feel after a 12-hour shift when they get a job? You know, and this is the thing we're thinking about. We're kind of pathologising even just being tired. It's normal to feel tired and go to bed. The kids should be going to bed tired. And Graham says, where do the kids get the money for these mobile phones? The parents have got something to do with it.
Well, that's it. Anyway, look, still to come. The Harry Potter star, Daniel Radcliffe, hasn't done much since, has he? Has refused to apologise to J.K. Rowling. In fact, he says he's sad about their friendship ending, and it's all over the rift over trans rights because he doesn't defend her right to say trans women aren't women. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Dubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Do you mind if I ask you a little bit about Sebastian? It really amazes me how a mother who can lose a child in such a shocking and unexpected way, so little, so precious, can then turn that grief into something so positive. How did you find the strength to get up, get a camera crew, as you say, travel to the other side of the world and investigate all of this?
I was angry at Sebastian for dying. You know, you feel like saying, God, 32 years later, and I can still get very, very upset about it. I was angry that something that while he was born and lived with me and slept and then died, they were actively campaigning in New Zealand to try and stop this happening because they had a very high cot death rate there. They had the lady, the Anne Diamond, if you like, of New Zealand, a television presenter called Judy Bailey, went on telly every night and said, if you're just about to put your baby down to sleep, put him on his or her back, not the tummy, and this will help. And their cot death rate plummeted. And I went out to New Zealand and met her, and it was anger that drove me to come back and demand that we have the same advert here, the same campaign. And of course, I got all this complete nonsense from the Department of Health saying, you know, oh, young mothers do not watch television, I was told. In other words, while New Zealand mums were being told how to save their babies' lives, we actively denied British mums that advice during the time that Sebastian and others were dying.
And the other point, I suppose, to make is it's helpful to educate all generations, because when I had my babies, my mum would say, oh, he's not settling, just stick him on his tummy, he'll be much happier, that's what we did with you. And we had to say, well, things have changed, and, you know, but it's about educating everybody, because it's not just the mums that get their hands on the babies.
GB News is Britain's election channel. And from tonight,
the people decide.
As the country heads to the polls in a rush of elections.
We'll take you through the night as the first results come in.
And we'll pick up at breakfast
with the very best guests and analysis. And on the weekend, the results won't stop, and neither will we.
We'll explore what it all means for you as we look ahead to the general election.
Continuing coverage live from tonight at midnight on GB News.
Well, the panel are back, and Caroline even managed to get here on time, unlike before. And Sam List, of course, political editor of the Daily Express. Ladies.
Hello. Right, should we talk... Hello, it was all very polite, wasn't it?
Hello.
Quite calm for a change. Should we talk about the island migrant row, Sam? This is chaos over there now, isn't it? They've moved the tents.
Yeah, I mean, this story is quite remarkable because obviously it's something come out of nowhere that huge numbers of migrants are leaving the UK, going into Ireland, and Ireland do not like it. Now, Ireland are in this very bizarre situation where their court said that they can't deport migrants back to the UK because there is a risk of them then being sent to Rwanda, and that makes the UK not a safe country.
Make this up, could
so
you?
the government,
satire died,
the government is going to have to. The government in Dublin is going to have to do what our government did and ignore the courts and legislate to make the UK a safe country, as we have done with Rwanda.
Yeah, and we will ignore the legislation anyway.
Yeah. So it's a very, very, very ironic scenario that Ireland, all these people in the, leaders in the EU, looking down on the UK for what it's done over Rwanda, and are now having to do the same.
And the tents, Malone, they were all, unlike us, we put them in hotels at vast expense. The refugees were in tents in Dublin in particular.
1,700 people were in these tents, and there was no sanitation, no toilets, no washing facilities, so you can imagine what the streets of Dublin were like. But, the thing is, so what they did was they brought in a big crane with a truck, and they just mowed the tents down. I think The Guardian called it...
Were people in them? Were people in the tents?
No, of course not. They got them at the tents first. But The Guardian called it cleansing, which I thought was a bit dramatic. But anyway, the streets probably did need cleaning after all that. And they've washed all the streets down and they've put them in...
Must have stank.
Can you imagine if you're on your way to work and you're walking past people who have no toilet? Anyway, so they've now moved them to a place where they have waterproof tents and toilet facilities and showers. And now the costs begin. Because an island is going to get a taste of what we have had for the last... however many years, 4 or 5 years, with people coming over. But I find their attitude hysterical. They're screaming hypocrites. If we had mowed down a load of tents, they would have said inhumane, cruel, whatever. Right. Now they're seeing what is happening here, because 80% of the migrants they have had have crossed through the border that Ireland, the Dublin, insisted together with the EU that should be an open border.
No cameras.
Housed by their own petard, one would say,
that's right.
Thoroughly and utterly deserved. And as Sam just said, they want to send them back here, but their own courts decided that we're not safe.
I'm sorry, I'm enjoying every minute of this.
I think many people might be
I think it's fantastic.
Sunak has not to back down on this, because he has said there's no way on God's earth we're taking the migrants back here. Not until France takes them back.
Which France won't.
They won't. So let's hope he keeps to his word. Rishi's doing well at the moment, so let's hope he keeps to his word on this and does what he says he's going to do. So
right, let's talk about the Garrick Club, shall we?
Oh, this is so...
I have to declare an interest. I'm a new member.
A new member?
I've only been a member about 6 weeks.
And it's been
maybe
open
not
since
after today.
1831, which is about the year that you were born, I think, isn't it? It's taken you a long time, Andrew, to get your membership. So this has been rumbling on and on. So it was a Guardian story. It was on front page of the Guardian, and we both sat here that morning and went, "Is it really that important that a men-only club?"
Cabinet Secretary is a member of the Garrick, and he resigns.
Well, what a wuss!
Simon Case, what a wuss!
What a wuss!
So some of the members now, Sam, are saying if you don't let women in, there's about 1,500 members. If you don't let women in, we're leaving.
Yeah, but do you know what the funny thing is about this? It's not because they're so desperate to share all this space with women. It's because of the bad publicity. Their statement says that the adverse publicity is affecting their professional relationships.
And this is
it's not because they want women in there.
Sting.
Exactly. Stephen Fry.
But it's Sting and Stephen Fry.
Yeah.
But Piers, you have said, and I know you have said, that you don't want women in there because you don't want to bow to the Guardian's demands and Guardianista's
demands. Let me say about the club.
Women
are in the club. They can buy a drink at the bar.
We've been together.
We have. And they've got... I think there's only about one place they can't go, which is under the stairs.
And I went there.
Very small area.
I went there.
That sounds like
I went there.
And they can be associate members, but not full members, and they can eat in the same place. So it's a lot of fuss about nothing. But what I find outrageous is that these so-called titans of British government, like the Cabinet Secretary and the head of MI6, panic because the Guardian puts on the front page they're members of the club. The membership list, by the way, is public. It is a public list. Resign from the club, and now there's pressure for the club to take women. What? Because the Guardian says so.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, why do I want that old rag to decide who's members of a club that's been going around since 1831?
So members, Carol, have basically been blackmailed into virtue signalling that they will support women. I think you can be a member of this club and still think you like to have women to have equal rights.
I think that a lot of women will say, Do you know what? I want to be a member of your club. Why would I want to go and sit with a whole load of people like this every night of the week? And there's a lot of them a lot older than him, let me tell you. There's a lot of old footy-duddies in there.
And I've read a lot of women columnists saying just that. Have your own women, have a women's only club.
Funny enough, I'm one, Piers.
You are.
I
read a column.
Yeah, he forgets.
But there's been women's clubs and they don't last because women don't want to do it.
No.
You know, women aren't bothered about it.
The last time I was at the Garrick, there were almost as many women in the restaurant as men. And
it's much nicer to be taken and have somebody pay for you than have to pay for yourself.
That's exactly right. You can't buy a drink.
There's going to be a vote for this on the 7th of May, and the committee will decide whether they should admit women to the club. And would you give up your membership if they said we'll let the women?
I wouldn't give it up, because it can take 3 or 4 years to get your membership. It didn't take me that long, because I had a very good campaign manager to get me in, Piers Pottinger.
I'm sorry to interrupt you all, but we've got some breaking news now. We want to go to Mark White. This is about the 36-year-old man has appeared in court charged with the murder of the 14-year-old boy who was killed in that sword attack in East London. Our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, is here to tell us all about it. Mark, what do we know?
Well, this was 36-year-old Marcus Monzo from Newham in East London, a dual Spanish-Brazilian national who appeared in the dock here at Westminster Magistrates Court. He was driven to court in a prison van, which was escorted by police vans, arriving here this morning at Westminster Magistrates Court for that appearance in the dock here at court number 1 of this Magistrates Court. Now, the defendant was wearing a prison-issue grey tracksuit. He spoke only to confirm his name, and he is charged with a number of counts, including murder, the murder of schoolboy Daniel Ajurin. On Tuesday morning, the 14-year-old was killed just outside his house, not far from Hainault Tube Station in East London. This defendant also faces 2 other charges of attempted murder, 2 charges of grievous bodily harm, a charge of aggravated burglary, and a charge of possessing a bladed article. Now, according to the prosecution, as they set out some of the details of this case, the first victim was struck by what the Crown claimed was a samurai sword. That victim struck in the neck and injured. A second victim was then allegedly attacked in their own bedroom. And then the third victim, Daniel Ajurin, was struck and fatally wounded in the neck by this samurai sword. 2 police officers were also attacked and seriously injured, according to the Crown. Now, this man, Marcus Monzo, has been remanded back into custody. He will appear again at the Central Criminal Court. A date of the 7th of May has been set aside, but they are trying to see if they can fit a court date in tomorrow morning. But for the time being, he has been remanded back into custody.
OK, thank you.
Mark White at court. It's shocking. We've got Carol and Sam still with us. Look,
you know, this little boy, Daniel Ajurin, he had such a bright future ahead of him. You know, he's a really clever lad. And his mum saw him after this happened. Parents, you never get over the murder of a child. But in this way, having seen it, I mean, it's beyond. And you know, it's interesting that today, it's bad timing for Starmer today, but in the papers, we've all been reminded his opposition to the use of tasers with police. Now, we saw cops there. One of them nearly had a hand hacked off. Another cop was hurt. 2 other members of the public hurt. You know, if those police people hadn't had tasers, they would have been dead today. And Starmer has been campaigning for years, along with a lot of other Liberals, saying we shouldn't use tasers because they hurt people, and they're supposed to hurt. But that police officer who got, you know, you have to get really close with the taser, and that guy's wielding that sword, which is, you know, about 2 foot long. Well, you have to get really close, or they don't connect.
We debated it yesterday on the programme, and we talked, and I would say every police officer force should
have a taser.
Routinely, because police officers should not be forced, Sam, into a situation where you're confronting someone with a 2-foot-long blade and don't have any means to turn them. The days of the whistle and the truncheon are over.
That is true. I think with tasers, certainly, I think that taser's very pro police carrying tasers. But I think actually firearms I think is a step too far.
Oh, I agree with that.
Do you?
Yeah,
I see, I don't.
Because you've got to think, Carol, that in the last few years, particularly since COVID, they've recruited so many police officers by Zoom. They don't really know who these people are. And so for me, it should only be the elite. It should only be the ones who've been properly trained, who you really know who they are. But tasers, fine, but
they are highly trained, and I think, you know, I was talking to two police retired police chiefs yesterday, and both of them said, you know, if you'd asked me 5 years ago about firearms on bridges, we would have said absolutely not. Both of them are saying that the times have changed and the crime has changed, and violent crime is rocketing. There's you know, there's no way to control it anymore. And I'm not saying that every cop should carry a gun, but I think in circumstances like that, they should be a gun, because they could have taken him. You don't have to shoot to kill. You can take them down. You know.
We have to wrap up there, ladies. Thank you so much, Sam and Carol. Latest headlines now with Sophia Wensler.
Bev, thank you. It's 11:31. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. As we've just been hearing, a Spanish-Brazilian national has appeared in court charged with the murder of schoolboy Daniel Angerin in north-east London. Marcos Aurelio Adwini Monzo from Newham in London is also charged with 2 counts of attempted murder and 2 counts of grievous bodily harm. The prosecution alleges the defendant was armed with a samurai sword. Daniel was fatally injured as he walked to school on Tuesday morning. 4 other people, including 2 police officers, were injured. Former Deputy First Minister John Swinney has confirmed he's running to succeed Humza Yousaf as both SNP leader and Scotland's First Minister. If successful, it will be the second time Mr Swinney, who was Deputy First Minister for more than 8 years under Nicola Sturgeon, has led his party. He previously held the post between 2000 and 2004. 711 people were detected crossing the English Channel on Wednesday, the highest number on a single day so far this year. That's according to the Home Office figures. It brings the total number who've crossed so far this year to nearly 8,300. That's 34% higher than the total at the same point last year. And voters are heading to the polls today in a series of local elections across the country. There are elections in 107 local authorities across England, as well as 11 mayoral races. A by-election will elect a new Blackpool South MP following the resignation of former Conservative Scott Benton. Police and crime commissioners will also be chosen. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has been out and about campaigning today. Meanwhile, Labour leader Keir Starmer was at the polling station earlier. And Reform Party leader Richard Tice was also out casting his vote this morning. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2515 and 1.1695 euros. The price of gold is £1,835 and 85 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 8,147 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Up at noon, good afternoon, Britain, with Emily and Tom. Woohoo! What's coming up on the show, guys?
This is going to be a very long day for you, Tom, because you're all over the TV because you're hosting the election show tonight.
Technically, that's tomorrow, Andrew. That starts at midnight, so I'm going to go home and try and get some beauty sleep in between this show.
That's sensible.
I think you should.
That's sensible. We've got so much coming up today, though. A large gin and tonic.
That won't help me for the programme through the night.
No, that's not true.
We're not advocating booze to get
any other energy drink.
No.
We've got so much coming up on the show, though, this afternoon, and Tom will be full of beans. Full of beans. Have you seen protesters are slashing tyres of a bus, throwing e-bikes under the bus, because this is a bus that was flagged to take migrants from a London hotel to, guess what? Ooh. The Bibby Stockholm barge. So we've got protesters donning COVID masks, slashing tyres. They don't want this bus to take migrants from a London hotel to the Bibby Stockholm. It's quite crazy scenes. We'll have some picture for you in
in a bit.
And the question is, to what extent is this the sign of things to come? We saw the footage break yesterday of the Home Office rounding up those who have been earmarked to go to Rwanda. With these protests now on those that are even going to go to the Bibi Stockholm, what more could we expect for those that have been earmarked to get on flights to Rwanda? It could be a real moment of resistance and a test for this government.
Yeah, absolutely.
But also today, north of the border, we're expecting a will she, won't she moment. Will Kate Forbes this afternoon throw her hat into the ring to be the next SNP leader? Of course, in your airtime, we've seen John Swinney declare...
Mr. Exciting.
Mr. Exciting. Will he be coronated? Will this be a coronation or will he have a challenger?
Yes, because Kate Forbes is more popular with the general Scottish public, is she not? Yeah. But will the SNP allow her to be leader, or will they just go with a boring continuity candidate?
How she could work with the Greens with their mad views on gender identity and all the rest, because she's such a, by her own virtue, socially conservative.
This is the problem here that the SNP face. Either they choose the candidate who's popular in the country but couldn't hold together a coalition in Parliament, or they pick the candidate who can hold together some sort of deal in the Parliament but is less popular in the country.
He's grey and boring. He did it before and he was hopeless.
And more from midday, nothing hopeless with Emily and Tom. For now, though, this is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Stay with us.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
Organisations, plural, because there's loads of people doing this, that organisations are charging schools to be part of this odd league table about who's trying to outdo who when it comes to who is more trans-inclusive with the kids than the next person. There's something that makes me uneasy about this.
Supposing a child comes home and says, you think, oh, I've done well today. He said, well, how have you done? He said, well, I was #1 painter, or I was #1 reader. No, I wasn't. I was made LGBT champion. This is a 4- and 5-year-old. Look, I can understand this, actually, as we develop into the secondary school. I can understand more debates taking place. I cannot understand why we have to thrust it at young children. And I think if you ask the parents, they'd be hostile to it. And what about the role the teacher has to play in all this?
Society has been one way, the pendulum is swinging the other way, and they're pushing it very far in order to kind of proliferate change. And this is probably the toughest period in that evolutionary process, because the LGBTQ+ community is saying that you've got to really rage against the machine to get people to listen. Because put it like this now, even this conversation, the whole country is listening, the whole world is listening. These are the kinds of eyeballs and ears they haven't had before. And there's going to be friction. There's going to be a locking of heads in the process to getting to a point where you establish a new equilibrium where they feel more incorporated. Like I've said, the greatest force of allies that the LGBTQ+ community has always had is heterosexual women. What you're moving towards now is doing things that is beginning to turn them from allies into people who feel that, oh, for you to thrive, I'm being deprived, and that's a problem. When they realise you're alienating allies, they will understand you've got to recalibrate to have that kind of understanding between both parties.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel. And from tonight,
The people decide.
As the country heads to the polls in a rush of elections. We'll take you through the night as the first results come in.
And we'll pick up at breakfast
with the very best guests and analysis.
And on the weekend, the results won't stop, and neither will we.
We'll explore what it all means for you as we look ahead to the general election.
Continuing coverage live from tonight at midnight on GB News.
It's 11:40 with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Bev Turner, and Andrew Pearce. You just finishing your digestive biscuit there?
So we haven't. What about yours? I have to provide them. Actually, to be fair, Bev does bring in croissants on a Thursday. Now, exciting moments if you're in Scotland in particular, because John Swinney, the former SNP Deputy First Minister, has announced he's running to be Hamza Yousaf's replacement as leader of the Scottish National Party. Here's what he had to say earlier this morning.
I want to build on the work of the SNP government to create a modern, diverse, dynamic Scotland that will ensure opportunity for all of her citizens. I want to unite the SNP and unite Scotland for independence.
And that was just before he got a ringing endorsement from Andrew Pearce, who said he was the most boring.
He's boring. I've met him a few times. He's boring and he's dull. And as I pointed out earlier, he was seen off when he was leader of the Scottish National Party before, not by the voters, but by one... What's his name?
Sean Connery.
Yeah, who Bev said, is he still very involved with Scottish National Party politics? Said, tricky really, because he's been dead for 3 years.
I should have known.
Always on the pulse.
Joining us now is our Scotland reporter, Tony Maguire, a man who is on the pulse. How has this nomination, this throwing his hat in the ring, Tony, how's it been greeted up there in Scotland?
Good morning. Well, certainly it was the worst kept secret, essentially, in Scottish politics over the last few days. John Swinney, it seemed like one by one, the Hamza Yousaf's cabinet lined up behind to endorse the former Deputy First Minister, indeed former leader of the SNP way back in 2003, give or take. But indeed, you know, he came out fighting and he immediately addressed one of the key concerns, complaints of his detractors, which was how long would he really stick about here? You know, he's made a name for himself as a loyal party man and as a key supporting character to the likes of Nicola Sturgeon. But he came out saying, I am not an interim and I am not a caretaker. He has full intention to take the party to a victory in the 2026 Scottish election. You know, and obviously the interesting discourse that has been around this political race ever since Hamza Yousaf's resignation on Monday has been on Kate Forbes as well. We're still to hear, we're expecting something of a statement, but I think the key there is in the wording. So John Swinney on stage this morning, he said that he really wants Kate Forbes to play a huge part in his government if he is successful in being elected as the SNP leader and First Minister. And, you know, this was at his launch event this morning, but this afternoon we are told that we will hear a statement from Kate Forbes. Is that a signal that perhaps she will not throw her hat in her ring this time? Lots of chat going on about if Kate Forbes was to end up runner-up again against the likes of John Swinney, you know, how much gravitas could she really have if she wanted to throw her hat in the ring a third time, etc. You know, I think the SNP, the party line is she still has some to learn. You know, undeniably she's been hit with the most vitriolic gibberish, shall we call it, on social media in the last few days, again bringing in her religion, which is always funny because of course John Swinney is a man of faith himself. So indeed all eyes on Kate Forbes this afternoon, but John Swinney will be feeling quite good about himself after this morning's event.
All right, that's Tony Maguire in Scotland. Of course, we'll know later this afternoon whether Kate Forbes is going to throw out in the ring. Doesn't seem from Tony that she's going to.
No, but she probably should.
Well, there'll be it's what they do. They do the men in suits, women in suits. They'll stitch up a deal behind the scenes.
I think you're probably
to
right
get
first time round.
Get Swinney in.
The men.
Yeah, it is the men. Yeah.
Right, still to come, we're seeing live pictures of police in California as they prepare to clear out more than 1,000 pro-Palestine protesters. There's a crackdown on student demonstrations going on right now across the US. We're going to be talking to an expert on this. Don't go anywhere. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Many of us had some heavy thundery downpours overnight and there's a risk of a bit more thunder to come as we go through today. We have low pressure to the southeast of the UK and then a trailing front across southern parts of England and into Wales brings a lot more cloud as we go through today and some further outbreaks of rain. Some of them could be a little bit thundery at times as we go through into the afternoon, but it's later on that we're going to see the heaviest thundery downpours. Further north across much of northern England, Scotland and into Northern Ireland, a lot of bright, fine and at times sunny weather and some decent temperatures too. Some places getting into the low 20s, though a wind coming in from the North Sea will keep some northeastern parts a bit cooler. Like I said, some heavy thundery downpours developing across central parts as we go through this evening and into the start of the night could cause some localised problems. Further north though, and it's largely dry across much of Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England, some clear spells, but temperatures not dropping a huge amount. In fact, under the clouds, some towns and cities will hold up in double figures. A bit of a wet start, though, across central southern parts as we go through Friday, and then a spell of rain pushing in from the east across northern parts of England, southern Scotland. Could be some thunder mixed in with this as well. However, to the north and the south of these areas of cloud and thundery rain, there's going to be some decent bright and sunny weather, and in any sunshine it should feel relatively warm for northern Scotland and southern England. Elsewhere, a bit cooler under the cloud and rain.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel. And from tonight,
the people decide.
As the country heads to the polls in a rush of elections.
We'll take you through the night as the first results come in. And we'll pick up at breakfast
with the very best guests and analysis.
And on the weekend, the results won't stop, and neither will we.
We'll explore what it all means for you as we look ahead to the general election.
Continuing coverage live from tonight at midnight on GB News.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Good morning, it's 11:48. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Now we are joined in the studio by Jennifer Ewing, a spokesperson for Republicans overseas. And Jennifer, we just want to bring some of this live footage in of events in America. Now, explain to us why this issue particularly, because we've seen students over the years. They always love a good protest. And thank goodness that we do have students who will stand up for what they believe in. But this has tipped over now into something almost unprecedented.
I just listening on the radio. This is the violent demonstrations now at 2 universities over Gaza.
Absolutely, and I think what started out back in October as very organic protests, you know, free speech, all of that, against what's going on in Gaza, Israel, that started out very organic, student-led. Something changed in the last week, where this went from that issue being, led by the students to somebody else taking over. This is now very well organized. It's very well funded. It's spread all throughout the United States to various campuses, and this is no longer about the Gaza-Israel issue. This is very, very anti-American. It's very anti-West. It's very anti-capitalist. So it's kind of the rerun of the playbook of BLM, of Antifa.
Black Lives Matters.
Black Lives Matter, all of the protests and the damage we saw in the summer of 2020. So this has moved beyond the original cause. I mean, sure, there's still some underlyings there, but it's moved way beyond that. It's very well funded. Look across at the tents. They all have the same REI tents, and there have even people who have admitted to saying, yes, we are supporting this.
And who would they be? Who are those people?
Well, it's Open Society, which is George Soros's group.
Oh, him.
Yes, for sure. And then we already know he supports various DAs, Chicago, San Francisco, various places like that.
And he got involved in Britain in the anti-Brexit campaign.
Yes,
£400,000 he gave. Outrageous. A foreign national getting involved in our referendum.
Exactly. So you touched upon the violence. Now, a lot of what's happening in some of these schools is the students, who are trying to get an education. It's the season of finals and graduation. A lot of the students are pushing back. So you've seen everything from some Jewish students pushing back on the UCLA campus, that's University of California, Los Angeles. The University of North Carolina, we saw these fraternity boys, I don't know if you saw this, that when a Palestinian flag had been put up, a group of fraternity boys got together, pulled it down, put up the American flag, and somebody, it was quite funny, said, give these fraternity boys a keg party, right? Do you know how much has been raised?
Party?
A keg party. Do you know, it's like what we all do in college.
Beer.
Yeah. Do you know how much has been raised in 24 hours? $300,000.
Wow, that's serious money.
That's serious money for a keg party, which is kind of a joke.
That's organised.
But it's people...
That's all going to go for beer.
It's all going to go for beer. And, so there's a couple of things happening here. For people who really are concerned about the Gaza-Israel issue, their issue is being hijacked by all of these protesters. You saw the people at Columbia lock themselves in Hamilton Hall, did damage, demanded, humanitarian aid in the, in the sense of, their Uber Eats and all this sort of stuff. So it's gone beyond the pale.
Is this damaging? Biden has spoken out, but belatedly and not very emphatic. Is this going to become an issue that's going to hurt him?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's becoming very much a political issue. And you're seeing, not only are you seeing some of the way the states handle it, right? Say a Florida and a Texas will have cracked down quite hard, versus California, New York are probably where a lot of the violence and...
Home of the Democrats.
Exactly. So right there you've got Biden, you're right. He took about a week or so to come out and say something. It was basically both sides of the protest, so the protesters and the anti-protesters chanting F Joe Biden. So the joke is, oh, wow, we've united the country.
So he's alienating both sides?
He's alienating both sides.
A bit like the Starmer situation here in terms of people calling for a ceasefire and it dividing both sides.
Exactly. Whereas Trump has come out very much in favour, say, let's take the New York situation, very much in favour of the New York Police Department. He's a big backer of the police. So he's come out and say, hey, this was a really difficult job for them to do, to break into this Hamilton building and, stop it. But as with everything with former President Trump, this would have never occurred on his watch, so this wouldn't have occurred on his watch. You should have shut this down when they were in the tents.
But this is the gift of being an opposition.
It is, yes, very much. And a lot of these issues, you were asking earlier about the court cases and, well, not ideal because it's kept him off the campaign trail. Before and after his trials in New York, he's been a genius, sort of campaigner in New York, which is usually quite blue, but he's gone to see the construction workers outside of J.P. Morgan. That same night, Biden went to a very, very expensive fundraiser with the actor Michael Douglas. So you're really seeing the divergence of the candidates and, kind of the real America versus the elites.
OK, Jennifer, brilliantly summed up. Jennifer Ewing there now, of course. I will be back on Monday. Andrew will be enjoying
Have a lovely bank holiday weekend.
Have a lovely weekend.
I think I'll be working because of these elections.
Is anyone?
Oh, there, Andrew having a little break, maybe. Coming up on our show, you've been showing that extraordinary footage from the United States. We're going to be heading to some rather smaller scale protests, actually, in the United Kingdom. It seems our students are playing copycat. How far could that go? And also protests in London. A bus that's taking migrants from a London hotel to the Bibby Stockholm barge has had its tyres slashed and e-bikes thrown under its path. What is going on?
All that to come, and what's happening in Scotland. Live event in our time. See that next.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, here's your latest GB News weather brought to you by the Met Office. Northern parts will stay dry as we go through the rest of today, but further south we have some thundery, showery rain, and that's in association with a front that's trailing across central parts at the moment. And we do have low pressure towards the southeast, and that's brought quite a blustery, breezy theme for many of us. But it is the heavy, perhaps thundery downpours across central parts of England and Wales as we go into the night that's most likely to cause some disruption in a few places. There will be quite a bit of cloud for many of us, but towards northern, northwestern parts of the UK, some clear skies. Despite these though, temperatures not dropping a huge amount. Many towns and cities, especially where it stays cloudy, will hold up in double figures. A bit of a wet start then across some central parts as we go through into Friday. And also watch out for some showery outbreaks of rain which could turn thundery, pushing across northern parts of England and southern Scotland too. To the north of the areas of wet and cloudy weather, there'll be some decent sunshine, so for northern Scotland, and also to the south, so across southern parts of England I'm expecting some bright sunny weather. And where we see some sunshine, it is going to feel pretty warm, but under the cloud and rain, feeling markedly cooler than it has done recently. As we go into Saturday and the weekend as a whole, there's a fair bit of uncertainty at the moment. It does look like it'll be quite cloudy with some outbreaks of rain for Scotland and Northern Ireland.